after critics continue to point out its shortcomings, namely the absence of the term verification. Pompeo says it's implied in the term complete denuclearization, to which Kim has agreed. Pompeo is currently here in Seoul to brief his South Korean and Japanese counterparts on the summit. And so first we turn to Devin Whiting, who's in the news centre, to bring us more details on that meeting, as well as other stories of the day. Devin?
Hi, Jong-un. Yeah, it was a three-way meeting bringing together Pompeo, South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa, and Japan's top diplomat Taro Kono. Pompeo briefed them on the summit, and the three reaffirmed that they will continue to work closely together for the denuclearization and peace on the Korean peninsula. Our Park Hee-jun has the details.
South Korea, the U.S., and Japan will continue to maintain close cooperation to achieve North Korea's CVID.
The world should rest assured that the United States, the Republic of Korea, and Japan remain committed to achieving the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea.
South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono held a trilateral session in Seoul just 2 days after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump signed a statement agreeing to pursue complete denuclearization. At a joint press conference following the meeting, the three countries said they welcomed the adoption of the statement, in which Kim reaffirmed his commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, and Trump promised to guarantee the North Korean regime security. They said the summit is just the beginning and that Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo will continue cooperating to implement the statement. Kang, Pompeo, and Kono showed a united front on their ironclad alliance as well. Kang reaffirmed that South Korea's alliance with the U.S. is stronger than ever and that U.S. forces will continue to play an important role on the Korean peninsula.
And lastly, Secretary Pompeo and I reaffirmed that the ROK-U.S. alliance, which celebrates its 65th anniversary this year, is robust as ever, that the United States forces in Korea has played and will continue to play a crucial role for deterrence and peace and stability on the Korean peninsula.
Pompeo also stressed that there will be no lifting of sanctions or any kind of economic benefits given to North Korea before its complete denuclearization. After wrapping up his schedule in Seoul, Pompeo will meet senior Chinese officials and possibly President Xi Jinping in Beijing to brief them on the details of the North Korea-U.S. summit. He's also expected to ask for Beijing's support for the follow-up measures to implement the joint statement before he heads back home in the late evening. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
And just about an hour ago, President Moon Jae-in also met with Taro Kono at the Blue House. They discussed ways to go about negotiations with Pyongyang post-Singapore through close cooperation between South Korea and Japan. Earlier today, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also visited the Blue House to personally brief President Moon on the summit. According to the presidential office, President Moon congratulated the U.S. on a successful summit, calling it, quote, a great historic achievement.
미국, 일본, 한국인들을 비롯한 전 세계인들로 하여금 전쟁 위협, 또 핵위협, 그리고 또 장거리 미사일의 위협에서 벗어날 수 있게 했다. 이런 것만 하더라도 엄청난 가치 있는 일이었다고 생각을 합니다.
Moon and Pompeo agreed that more important than anything else is to ensure that the agreement between the U.S. and North Korean commitments are carried out quickly and completely. And as we speak, President Moon is convening a full meeting of the National Security Council to further discuss the outcomes of the Singapore summit. As those talks took place today with the U.S. and Japanese diplomats, South Korea was also holding high-level military talks with North Korea for the first time in over a decade. Generals from the two sides are at the border village of Panmunjom discussing ways to ease cross-border tensions as a follow-up to the Panmunjom Declaration made by President Moon and Kim Jong-un back on April 27th. Also in the background is this week's freeze-for-freeze deal between Pyongyang and Washington, in which the North promised to halt its nuclear program, and the U.S. said it would be suspending its war games in the region. Our Park Ji-won has been keeping an eye on these talks in Panmunjom. We'll now go live to her at Seoul's Office for Inter-Korean Dialogue. Ji-won?
Devin, as you mentioned, today's general-level inter-Korean military talks are the first of their kind in more than 10 years, the last ones taking place back in December 2007. And today's talks are currently underway at Tongil-gak on the North Korean side of Panmunjom, some 50 kilometers north of Seoul. The talks started at 10 a.m. with 5 member delegations from 2 Koreas participating. They are expected to discuss ways to ease tensions across the border area and to remove any military threats. Although we do not know any details of the ongoing talks as of now, the opening remarks by chief negotiators of the 2 delegations were released to the media, and the atmosphere was very smooth. So let's now take a listen to the opening remarks by the chief negotiators, Major General Kim Do-gyun from the South Korean delegation and Major General An Ik-san from the North Korean delegation.
As the 2 leaders have already presented a clear map regarding military affairs, I think both South and North Korea can achieve the expected results in these highly anticipated talks, if we discuss the issues in the firm spirit of the Panmunjom Declaration.
At this historic moment when the whole Korean nation is attempting to promote peace and prosperity, I am deeply moved to see North and South Korea's military authorities sitting down here face to face to discuss military issues in order to implement the Panmunjom Declaration.
And it's expected that the talks will continue until the late afternoon. Currently, the talks are set for 1 day only, but more of these inter-Korean military talks on a variety of issues are expected. Well, that's all I have for now. I will bring you more updates later in the newscast. Back to you, Devin.
All right, thank you very much for that. Park Ji-won at Seoul's Office for Inter-Korean Dialogue. Now, in Washington, the Trump administration is reportedly canceling the next joint military exercise with South Korea scheduled for August. This follows the pledge made by President Trump in Singapore earlier this week that he would stop U.S. war games in the region. Citing officials from the administration, multiple U.S. media reports say that the Pentagon will formally announce the cancellation in a press release on Thursday, local time. South Korea's defense ministry says the 2 sides are in close coordination on the issue. The drill in question is the annual Ulji Freedom Guardian exercise, a largely computer-simulated drill that last year involved over 17,000 U.S. troops alongside South Korean forces. And on to the local elections held in South Korea on Wednesday. It was a landslide victory for the ruling Democratic Party of Korea. Voter turnout was the 2nd highest ever for a local election, coming in above 60% for the first time in more than 20 years. Kim Min-ji reports.
This year's local elections were a massive win for the ruling Democratic Party of Korea and an unmitigated disaster for the main opposition Liberty Korea Party. Out of 17 posts for mayor and governor, the ruling party claimed victory in 14. What's especially significant about these positions is that they are seen as a springboard to key national leadership positions in the future. The party dominated the heavily populated areas of Seoul and its neighboring Gyeonggi-do province. Likewise, they took seats in the central districts, including Daejeon, on top of the usual liberal strongholds such as Jeollado province. And even in conservative strongholds, with the exception of 2 regions, Ulsan, Busan, and Gyeongsangnam-do province were taken by the ruling party. On Jeju Island, an independent candidate was elected. With that, the ruling party has been given an important boost, having added 5 governor and mayoral seats to the 9 it already had.
Our win is a victory for the people. We should repay voters who cast their ballots for us. We will do our best as the ruling party, take a more humble approach, and thoroughly deal with pending issues.
Pundits have pointed to the positive developments in regards to North Korea, saying the uptick in South-North relations and President Moon Jae-in's high approval ratings were favorable factors for the ruling party in this year's local elections. And the fact that the elections were largely overshadowed by the North Korea-U.S. summit, fresh allegations regarding the candidates themselves, or even ongoing issues such as an online opinion rigging scandal or even the faltering economy were pushed out of the spotlight. At the other end of the spectrum, the main opposition party wasn't able to position itself as a strong alternative. It still hasn't been able to completely sever its ties to impeach former President Park Geun-hye, and it's been more or less critical of everything the government has been doing, with voters unable to regain much trust in the party.
It's the first time we've experienced such a devastating loss. We humbly accept the results.
There's no doubt the results will give the ruling party a massive boost in that it will be easier to get President Moon Jae-in's policy agendas rolling, but some experts also say it's important to keep a balance between the progressive and conservative blocs in order to keep the ruling party in check. They also point out that the results don't necessarily mean that the people are happy with everything the ruling party is doing.
Moon Jae-in administration just took the administration just for 1 year. It's too soon to make any evaluation or judgment. Even if they won, the election with big margin, ruling party might have to think about whether their victory is what they have done right, or people still have, even though despite many factors that worry people.
The general consensus is that the ruling party will have to work extra hard before the next elections to compensate the voters that supported them, while at the same time the main opposition party needs to reflect on its current shortcomings and use the pain of the defeat as an opportunity to overhaul its still tainted image. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines for this hour.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo came straight from the North Korea-U.S. summit in Singapore to brief his South Korean and Japanese counterparts in Seoul. Together, they gave a press conference together after their meeting. So let's start this part of the show by taking a listen to some of what they had to say.
The three of us welcomed the adoption of the joint statement in Singapore. This is the first time that the highest authority of North Korea promised the President of the United States to work towards the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which we believe has bolstered the political momentum for action to resolve the North Korean nuclear issue. We shared our understanding that the June 12th summit is not the end, but a new beginning towards a denuclearized and peaceful Korean Peninsula.
The discussions we held today amongst the three of us reflect our three countries' commitment to continue working together towards the ultimate success of this effort. The world should rest assured that the United States, the Republic of Korea, and Japan remain committed to achieving the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea.
North Korea reaffirmed its commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, while the United States is committed to provide a security guarantee to North Korea. We understand that the United States will advance the discussion on provision of security guarantees while carefully monitoring whether North Korea takes concrete steps to fulfill its commitment to denuclearization. And we also note that no security guarantees have been given yet.
Now, joining us now to discuss that press conference between the foreign ministers, as well as looking back on the North Korea-U.S. summit itself, is Dr. Bong Young-sik from the Yonsei Institute for North Korea Studies. Dr. Bong, it's good to have you with us again.
Pleased to be here again.
Now let's start with some of the details from that press conference. Once again, Mike Pompeo, as well as actually Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono, talked about CVID, complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization. However, we all know now that it wasn't included in the final declaration that was signed between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. Pompeo has tried to justify it, saying that the phrase complete denuclearization includes verification implicitly. What do you say to that?
Well, it is a very high task for Secretary Mike Pompeo to persuade the rest of the world, including America's allies in Asia, such as Japan and South Korea, that the phrase complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which is written in the very short joint statement issued by Mr. Kim Jong-un and Mr. Donald Trump, is sufficient to mean CVID. But we see a lot of loose ends in the summit meeting held by the two leaders on the 12th in Singapore, because the CVID, the exact word was highlighted and emphasized by the Trump administration itself as the ultimate measuring stick of success for the summit meeting with North Korea. Remember that Secretary Mike Pompeo himself, in his press conference prior to the summit meeting, emphasized that CVID remained as the ultimate and unyielding goal of the Trump administration, and he even iterated that verification remains as the most crucial element in the outcome of the summit meeting. But none of those elements was clearly fleshed out in the letter of the joint statement. So if you just give the best benefit of the doubt to the Trump administration and the North Korean government, then the United States government might have gotten the very strong assurance from Chairman Kim Jong-un that because of the inherent limitations of the leadership of North Korea, that the exact wording of the CVID could not be actually written in the joint statement, but Kim Jong-un might have given very strong assurance to his counterpart, President Donald Trump, that CVID would be quickly and immediately taken by North Korea outside the scope of the letter of the joint statement. So we have to wait and see what kind of actions in the direction of CVID North Korean leadership is going to take after the summit meeting. If North Korea does not take any immediate actions that verifies that the North Korea shows the genuine intentions of the denuclearization, then unfortunately the summit meeting on the 12th should be regarded as a big disappointment, especially for the United States.
Well then, actually, how important is having the words verifiable and irreversible in the statement? If, as you say, Kim seems to have convinced Trump and Pompeo that he really will carry out denuclearization, what's the difference between having it in the statement and not in the statement?
Well, I'm not a spokesperson of the Trump administration, but it seems like President Trump believed that the summit meeting went really well without any pretentious gesture, that the phrase complete denuclearization includes all those elements, the complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement. But in order to facilitate the CVID as a process, it made a more strategic sense for the United States to give the benefit of doubt to the North Korean regime by not insisting upon inclusion of the exact phrase in the joint statement, but just a way for North Korean regime to actually take their actions in the direction of CVID. So having the right outcomes must be more important than insisting upon the inclusion of the exact phrase of CVID in the statement. So if the United States is going to see very clear actions taken by Kim Jong-un government of North Korea for CVID step by step, then Trump administration could easily defend its position that the summit meeting was a spectacular success. So only time will tell which side is correct.
I guess we have to give them some amount of trust. I think that's what they're trying to see. I think that's also a point that Kang Kyung-hwa and Kono also mentioned today, that they stress that this summit and this declaration is only the start. They seem to imply that the declaration, that more will be built from it. But the question is the statement a strong enough foundation for them to build on?
At least the Trump administration must think so. I guess it is a personal belief of U.S. President Donald Trump that the wording of the joint statement does not really matter, as long as the United States maintains the sufficient capability to pressure and punish Pyongyang if the Kim Jong-il regime will not take concrete steps toward the CVID after the summit meeting. Then as long as the United States maintains the capability to put the existing economic sanctions in place, if not imposing more harsh economic sanctions, if North Korea is not going to take any immediate and clear activities of denuclearization, then the wording of joint statement does not really matter. And since both leaders agreed to exchange visits, then Mr. Trump might have thought that there will be many more opportunities to clarify each other's positions regarding exchange in benefits, denuclearization of North Korea, and the security assurance for North Korea by the United States in the next summit meetings. So, as Trump emphasized prior to the meeting, this is just the first bite in the apple, though it's just the beginning of the long process.
U.S. Secretary of State Pompeo went straight from Singapore to Seoul to brief his counterparts, Kang Kyung-hwa and Taro Kono. I guess we can see from that it's he's sending a message that he finds he values the cooperation of these allies closely. But at the same time, reports definitely seem to suggest that South Korea and Japan weren't given prior notice to Trump's announcement that they were going to suspend military joint drills. What should be made of this? How can they take this?
What should be made of this? This is just a continuity of the America First policy of the Trump administration. It's a hallmark of the Trump administration in its conduct of foreign policy, even with regards to America's alliances, not only in Asia but also in Europe. That not having the prior consultations with South Korea and Japan about exchanging views on suspension or even termination of the regular massive joint military exercises between U.S. military and South Korean military is a big blow to a security partnership between Seoul and Washington. There's no doubt about it. And the phrases that President Trump used to explain this, such as these exercises are provocative and expensive. These are exactly the kind of expressions used by not South Korea but North Korea in its long-standing protest to a hostile policy taken by Seoul and Washington. So I guess President Trump was persuaded by Mr. Kim Jong-un on this point. And it also shows that everything is transactional. Everything is calculated in terms of saving American taxpayers money, even it comes down to alliance relations with Asian partners for this administration. But if the United States continues to insist upon unilateralism or transactional approaches to security matters toward Asian allies and the European security partners, such as NATO members, then the soft power of the United States will eventually diminish, and it will hurt the standing and influence of the United States in the long run. It is totally up to the Trump administration to the right calculation about the ups and downs of this America First policy.
There's actually some suggestion that actually the drills is not actually stopping the drills is not that big a deal, that it's been done before in previous agreements, and they can actually be restarted at any time. It's just a suspension, not scrapping the U.S. forces Korea, for example. Do you think this has some weight, this argument?
I would like to accept that explanation because who knows that this is only a temporary suspension in parallel with North Korea taking concrete steps toward the denuclearization. And who would say no to maintaining freeze to freeze, at least for a while, that North Korea does not conduct any additional missile or nuclear tests, and the South Korea and the United States stops military exercises as long as North Korea maintains no provocations. But the problem is that there is no prior consultations or detailed explanations given by Washington to Seoul and Tokyo before President Trump made this abrupt remark off the cuff at the press conference after the summit meeting in Singapore. So lack of consultation and the way that the U.S. president described all this decision as war games or provocative, expensive, and he also even expressed his intention that he would like to bring back all U.S. soldiers back home because South Korea and Japan do not seem to assume appropriate defense spendings. This hurts. These words hurt the security partnership between U.S. and Asian allies.
Well, there's so much more to talk about, but unfortunately we're out of time today. But thank you for coming in as usual and sharing your insights.
You're welcome.
And that brings us to the end of our show. I'll be back tomorrow, but do stay tuned to Arirang throughout the day for all of the latest updates from Korea and around the world. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Literally speaking, the essence of love in a short poem. Grass flower, pretty with a close look, lovely with a long gaze. So are you.
우리가 너무 잘 살고 너무 우리가 빠르게 속도에 빠져 있어서 그래요. 그리고 상대적 비교에 빠져서 그래요. 자기를 살펴보고 자기를 높여주고 하는 마음이 좀 부족하지요. 우리는 다 같이 꽃입니다. 꽃에 맞도록 아름답고 향기롭고 예쁘게 나는 괜찮다. 나는 앞으로 잘 살 것이다. 나는 충분히 사랑받고 이런 생각을 하고 그걸 잊지 마시기 바랍니다.
Like a grass flower, you are more than precious. 아리랑.
Jeonju holds the key to Korea's past. The rooftops of the traditional houses with their delightful tiles and piled up over the unpainted light pine wood of the exterior are captivating. And you must experience a traditional meal with dozens of small dishes spread out on a polished wood table featuring local delicacies. In fact, UNESCO has recognized the unique features of Jeonju's diverse cuisine. The delicate wooden walls and low stone walls of traditional houses blend harmoniously together with modern architecture. The Hanok Traditional Village has a variety of exciting events all year round that allow you to experience Korea's depth and breadth. Come to Jeonju and feel yourself, the cool mountain breezes, and dip your feet in the clear streams of the old town. Enjoy the polite service of the hosts at your local inn, where they wear traditional hanbok and treat you with great kindness.
These numbers show the average opportunity cost incurred in the development of a new drug announced by Roshan. But the profits upon success are larger than one can possibly imagine. A Affecting the fate of the company and even national wealth, drug development is an industry worth $1.1 trillion.
아마 전 세계에 있는 자동차라든지 이런 선박이라든지 이런 전체 사업规模보다 훨씬 더 큰 사업입니다. 그래서 우리 모두가 다 미래에 대한 신수종 사업이라고 다 신약 개발 프로젝트 이런 것들을 이야기를 하고 있고요.
The global society is aging, with life expectancy heading to 100. Due to an increasing number of people with chronic diseases, as well as improved income levels in China, India, and Latin America, the pharmaceutical market is booming. Added to this is the patent expiration of blockbuster drugs, which has triggered a race to dominate the market. Industrial Research, December 16, 2016. The IR-52 Chang Yang-shil Award Ceremony. Dubbed the Nobel Prize of Korea, most of the recipients are prominent companies. This year, however, an unknown venture company was on the list.
상장 크리스탈 지노믹스 주식회사 고혈관절염 치료제 아셀렉스 2016년 12월
Standing shoulder to shoulder with many conglomerates, the company's CEO is awarded for developing domestic new drug number 22, the first venture company to do so. It has taken the company 15 long years. It's an emotional moment for him.
저희들이 16년 동안 혁신 신약을 연구 개발하기 위해서 아주 혼신의 노력을 다해서 15년 만에 한국 바이오벤처 최초로 혁신 신약 퇴행성 관절염 치료 신약입니다. 아셀렉스를 개발해서 상품화를 했습니다. 거기에 대한 보상으로 오늘 이렇게 수상을 하게 됐습니다.
Acelex is used to treat osteoarthritis while suppressing stomach ulcers, a common side effect caused by existing drugs. The developer of Acelex is located in Pompeo. Striving to develop new drugs that the world has never seen before, the company was recognized for its drug development technology in 2003. It became the first in the world to reveal the three-dimensional structure of Viagra's target protein. And its paper was featured on the cover of Nature.
저희는 단백질 구조를 이용을 해서 거기에 맞는 약을 컴퓨터로 설계를 하고 그거를 더 이렇게 좀 옵티마이즈, 최적화한다고 최적화해서 약을 발굴하는 이제 그런 기술인데 그런 기술을 기반으로 해가지고 저희가 이제 논문을 만든 거가 이제 네이처 표지 논문이 된 거죠.
There are over 100,000 proteins in the human body. Diseases are triggered by the changes in these proteins. Drugs are effective only when their molecules fit exactly into the protein's active site, a hole that exists on its surface. If the active site is a lock, then the drug is its key.
그럼 이제 이걸 딱 보면은 우리가 저걸 알 수가 있어요. 어디다가 뭘 집어넣어야지 알 수 있겠다. 그럼 이제 우리 그림을 보면 이렇게 생겼습니다. 실제로 보면 단백질 속을 들여다보면 이렇게 원소들이 이렇게 배열이 되어 있는 거예요.
Using a computer, the researchers search for chemical compounds for the new drug based on the 3D model. This is how the Acelex capsules were born. It took 15 years to create Acelex, from developing candidate substances to conducting clinical trials and getting sales approval. Now, the company dreams of turning its brainchild into a blockbuster drug.
터키의 제약사가 터키와 다른 중동 19개국을 수출 계약을 했습니다. 그래서 저희가 이제 수출을 하는데 그게 이제 10년 예상이 6,300억입니다.
Its pipeline is competitive, from an antibiotic for superbacteria to an anti-cancer substance that has been designated as a rare drug in its development stage. The birth of the next Acelex seems near. This is a bioventure company in Cheongju, Chungcheongbuk-do Province. Orbimed, the global venture capital, and Novartis, the world's #1 pharmaceutical company, have invested in this firm. It was actually the only Korean company that Novartis chose to invest in despite the global financial crisis. It was all possible thanks to the company's technology for fully human antibodies. It involves developing antibodies from mice that cause minimal resistance inside the human body. With this technology, the company developed Tanibiramab, an anti-cancer antibody.
저희가 좋은 항체를 만들기 위한 제일 좋은 그 방법은 얼마나 많은 다양성을 가지고 있는 라이브러리를 저희가 항체 라이브러리를 보유하고 있느냐가 제일 큰 관건이 될 것 같고요. 그 라이브러리라고 하는 거는 우리가 얼마나 큰 도서관을 가지고 있느냐, 그래서 우리가 원하는 책을 얼마나 쉽게 우리가 찾을 수 있느냐라고 하는 그런 거와 거의 같은 개념이고요.
Avastin is an anti-cancer antibody drug that generates an annual revenue of $5.8 billion, a blockbuster drug. Tanibiramab is expected to become the next generation Avastin while even overcoming some tolerance issues.
팩트 하나는 겁니다. 캔서는 늘 플랜 B를 갖고 있다는 거예요. 그래서 그 플랜 B들을 저희들이 쭉 모아서 그러면 플랜 A와 플랜 B를 동시에 잡는 약을 만들자. 그러면은 어느 순간에는 플랜 C가 나올 수도 있겠지만 플랜 C가 나올 수 있는 기간은 플랜 B가 나올 수 있는 기간보다 훨씬 시간이 많이 걸리니까 그때까지는 사는 거다, 환자가. 그리고 혹시 플랜 A와 B를 동시에 어그레시브하게 잡으면 플랜 C가 어쩌면 안 올 수도 있다. 그럼 이제 큐어 개념이죠. 완치 개념이 되는 거니까.
Cancer cells proliferate by receiving oxygen and nutrients. When their size exceeds 1 cubic millimeter, the oxygen and nutrient supply is no longer adequate, leading to secretion of vascular endothelial growth factor, or VEGF. This combines with a receptor called VEGFR2 that exists on the surface of vascular endothelial cells and stimulates the formation of new blood vessels. And the cancer cells, receiving more oxygen and nutrients from the new vessels, gradually bulk up. And they spread to other parts of the body through metastasis, continuing to expand. Tanibiramab is an antibody that targets VEGFR2. It binds to the receptor to prevent it from attaching to VEGF, thus inhibiting the formation of new vessels and proliferation of cancer cells. Unfortunately, when attacked by a drug, cancer cells try to survive by acquiring drug tolerance. This is why the company has developed a next-generation dual-target antibody that not only takes care of VEGFR2, but also neutralizes Tie2, another important medium in the formation of new vessels. In short, it inhibits tumor growth by suppressing angiogenesis and effectively prevents the proliferation of cancer cells. At present, Tanibiramab is making the swiftest progress among the company's antibody substances. Being developed as a treatment for brain tumor, Tanibiramab has proven its superiority over Avastin in terms of safety and efficacy through animal testing and a 2-year phase 1 trial. It is currently undergoing a phase 2 trial in Australia.
이제 앞으로 정말 이 회사에서 개발했던 여러 약들이 어떤 펀딩만 충분하다면 충분히 다양한 암종에서 그게 미국 임상이든 호주 임상이든 유럽 임상이든 거침없이 할 수 있다는 거죠. 어마어마한 자신감들이 있고 옛날에 이제 경험이 없어가지고 좀 뭐 해외 임상이고 어떻게 뭐 랭귀지 배리어도 있고 그런데 지금은 뭐 직원들도 다 자신감이 있고 뭐 그 어느 누구랑 만나서 뭐 얘기를 할 때도 전혀 뭐 거침없이 다 프라이드를 갖고 얘기할 수 있고요. 그렇기 때문에 지금은 이제 뭐 타니비루맵 하나만 가 있지만 타니비루맵보다 훨씬 더 좋은 지금 캔디데이트들이 대기하고 있다는 거. 단순히 이제 저희가 그거를 임상에 다 넣기에는 돈이 부족해서 기다리고 있을 뿐이지 펀딩만 된다면 거침없이 할 수 있다는 거.
The company possesses the technology to directly make antibodies, which is rare among domestic pharmaceutical companies. It also has its own antibody library that consists of numerous antibody candidates, as well as about 10 substances for new immuno-oncology drugs. In addition, the company will soon apply for FDA clinical trials in the U.S. for one of its new drug substances that will succeed, tanibiramab. In a few years, we may see a new blockbuster drug. The hottest topic in the pharmaceutical industry is biomedicine. Proven to be safer and more effective than chemical drugs, its market has grown exponentially. This is a biopharmaceutical manufacturer located in Yeonsu-gu, Incheon. Having started out as a small venture in 2002, it now has assets worth over $4.8 billion. Its growth was made possible by Remsima, the world's first antibody biosimilar, and Herzuma, the second biosimilar to be successfully commercialized. Then what exactly is biosimilar? It's a biologic copy of a medical product with an expired patent.
화학 제품은 보통은 이제 실험실 레벨에서의 그 생물학적 동등성 시험을 거쳐서 간단하게 허가를 받는 반면에 그 바이오시밀러 제품은 전임상 그리고 임상 1상, 임상 3상까지 오리지널 제품이 겪는 안전성과 효능에 대한 검증 작업을 상당히 거의 그대로 거치면서 그 제품의 안전성과 효능성을 담보한 그런 제품이라고 볼 수가 있습니다.
Because biosimilars are cheaper than the original biologic, their market is expanding.
이 시대 바이오 의약품인 그 인슐린이라든가 인간 성장 호르몬 같은 분야에서는 이미 바이오시밀러 제품이 나오고 있었습니다. 그런데 이제 이런 호르몬 제품들은 그 분자량이 상대적으로 좀 작고 바이오시밀러 제품으로 개발하기가 좀 용이했던 부분이 있었는데 이 항체는 그 일종의 전임미답의 분야였다고 볼 수가 있고 차이는 그 인슐린이나 그 인성장 호르몬보다 구조가 워낙 크고 복잡하기 때문에 또 살아있는 세포에서 만들어내는 거기 때문에 이런 복잡하고 큰 구조의 그 바이오 의약품을 오리지널 제품과 동등한 수준으로 복제를 해낸다는 것은 불가능하다. 이게 이제 뭐 100년 이상 역사를 가진 글로벌 제약사들도 그렇게 알고 있었고 뭐 이제 들어오지 못하고 있던 분야였었습니다.
What made the impossible possible was the company's unique business strategy. It first built a world-class antibody manufacturing facility and launched a CMO business that supplies antibody drugs to global pharmaceutical firms. The proceeds were channeled into developing its own products, resulting in the world's first antibody biosimilar, Remsima. Remsima uses an antibody called infliximab, which binds to the pro-inflammatory TNF-alpha and neutralizes it.
이 제품은 현재 한국, 유럽, 일본, 미국 포함해서 전 세계 75개국에서 승인을 받았고 앞으로 한 150개 국가까지 이제 승인을 받을 예정입니다. 한국과 유럽에서는 이미 그 판매율이 30% 이상, 40%까지 지금 올라가 있고 올해 11월에 이제 미국에 런치가 됐는데 여기서도 한국과 유럽에 준하는 판매율을 기록할 걸로 보입니다. 그래서 한 제품이 한국 최초로 조 단위가 넘어가는 매출을 올릴 것으로 예상이 되고 있고요. 이미 누적 수출액, 매출액은 1조를 넘어간 상태에 있습니다.
Sales are rapidly increasing in advanced countries. One reason is that a number of European countries are encouraging the prescription of biosimilars to cut healthcare costs. Remsima is cheaper than Remicade, the original drug, by 30 to 40%, but offers the same results.
기존의 블록버스터라고 하는 큰 시장을 가지고 있던 제품들이 특허 만료가 돌아오게 됩니다. 그래서 2014년에 이런 특허 만료를 통해서 다국적 제약회사가 매출이 감소되는 게 820억 불이라고 하는 예측도 나오게 합니다. 그렇기 때문에 우리나라 같이 기술을 가지고 있는 후발주자들이 시장을 잠식할 수 있는 절호의 기회가 되는 거죠. 그래서 아마 우리나라에서도 좀 더 바이오 산업에 대해서 드라이빙을 하고 있는 부분이 그런 두 가지 관점에서 말씀드릴 수가 있겠습니다.
Many drug candidates for Korean companies are currently undergoing clinical trials. Moreover, 35 technologies have been exported by pharmaceutical firms over the past 2 years.
우리나라 바이오 제약 기업들이 최근 글로벌 진출을 지속적으로 성공시키고 있습니다. 이에 따라서 정부는 바이오 신약 부분이 대한민국의 미래를 이끌 차세대 성장 동력이라 판단하고 세계적으로 지원하고자 합니다.
This graph represents the global top 10 rankings of pharmaceutical companies. The government has launched a biomedical project to help Korean companies make it into the list of the world's top 10 pharmaceutical firms.
바이오 신약 프로젝트는 2018년부터 2027년까지 10년간 신약 후보 물질 100개 이상을 확보하고 이를 바탕으로 10개 이상의 글로벌 제약 기업을 육성하는 것을 목표로 하고 있습니다.
This is Osong High-Tech Medical Industrial Complex in Cheongju, Chongcheongbuk-do Province. It is home to an animal testing center that has been accredited by the Association for the Assessment and Accreditation of Laboratory Animal Care.
여기는 영상 교정실입니다. 동물 실험을 하는 동안 저희가 생체 영상을 촬영하는 공간입니다.
Today's experiment uses the nude mouse. Because of their innate lack of immunity, nude mice are often used to study cancer cells. The researchers are using this lab mouse to assess the efficacy of an anti-cancer drug. Animal testing is a prerequisite to performing clinical trials on humans. Positron emission tomography. After the mouse is injected with the anti-cancer drug, a PET scan is performed to confirm the drug's efficacy and safety and to check for signs of metastasis. A substance that emits optical signals is added to the drug to highlight its movement inside the mouse. The researchers can see how the drug spreads to each organ and the exact time it takes for the drug to get discharged.
여기는 원숭이 중에 마모셋이라고 불리는 원숭이가 있는 방입니다. 마모셋은 소위 말해서 성체가 됐을 때 한 300g 정도 되는 작은 원숭이이고요. 이 동물을 저희가 사용하는 이유는 신약 개발에 있어서 저희가 사람과 가까운 동물 모델로 사용할 수 있는 그런 동물 모델입니다.
The medical world is turning its eyes to marmosets, which can deliver detailed test results with only a small drug dosage due to their small size and high sensitivity. The Osong Laboratory Animal Center is the only place in Korea that uses marmosets. In addition, a high-grade clean room that is normally seen in semiconductor factories has been installed in the lab where the animals' diseases are manipulated and artificial insemination is performed. The center also has negative pressure systems in isothermal and isohumidity facilities. In short, the center is equipped with the best testing environment and cutting-edge technologies. It is to provide the optimal testing environment for new drug development.
우선 바이오 신약을 개발하는 데 소요되는 시간은 최소 10년에서 15년이라고 하는 긴 시간이 소요되기 때문에 벤처기업이나 중소기업들이 그러한 긴 시간 동안에 제품 개발을 하기 위한 영속성을 가기는 매우 어렵습니다. 따라서 국가에서 이러한 시설을 건립을 해서 연구 지원을 함으로써 신약 개발을 촉진할 수 있는데 그것이 바로 죽음의 계곡이라고 하는 데소밸리를 건너게 하는 것이 바로 오송천복단지의 역할이라고 생각합니다.
The Valley of Death is a phenomenon in which venture companies successfully develop a new technology but fail to commercialize it due to a lack of funds. The success rate of new drug development is only 9.7%. We visited a place that's said to help companies cross the Valley of Death. But first, we had to wear coveralls and disinfect the shooting equipment. This is the Clinical Drug Manufacturing Center, where official production has begun after 3 years of preparation. In March of last year, the center became the first public institution in Korea to obtain the GMP certification, which is recognized by the WHO. It also plans to obtain the European GMP certification in order to help domestic companies enter the global market. The pharmaceuticals' raw materials manufactured here are mostly used for animal tests and clinical trials. The manufacturing process consists of cell cultivation, refinement, and production, just like the manufacturing process for drugs. The center strives to support venture companies that have excellent technologies but lack the capital to speed up the commercialization of the products. Furthermore, from 2018, it plans to provide a one-stop service, allowing them to produce everything from raw materials to actual drugs. The complex also has a new drug development center, which provides assistance in the development of biomedical technology. Also, thanks to its 4 state-run biomedical facilities, companies have easy access to the medical information they need for their R&D efforts. Meanwhile, the 6 national healthcare agencies that are located nearby provide permit-related support, as well as various incentives to companies that move into the complex. The Osong High-Tech Medical Industrial Complex, home to companies, academic institutions, and government agencies, is the world's one and only biocluster, where anybody with an idea can receive the support they need to develop new drugs. Biomedicine is the new wave triggered by the aging society and technological advances. To Korea, an IT powerhouse that dreams of becoming a BT leader, biomedicine is an opportunity that cannot be missed. With dedication and will, both the public and private sectors must work together to seize this chance.
I'm currently living a time as an actress. The time of patience and perseverance to perform the best. I can remain cheerful despite of my tiring schedule thanks to my good old friends. It is because of my time with them. An enjoyable dinner meal with my friends after a long time. My tiredness is gone as if I wasn't tired at all. With friends, it is always an enjoyable time. Back in action! My time as a model and actress continues. The time with my friends completes me.
아리랑
Damian Shannon is a 28-year-old living in the United Kingdom. After graduating from the Open University, he qualified for a master's program at Oxford University in 2012. However, he was handed some news that came as a shock. Oxford had canceled his acceptance. More surprising was the reason for that decision.
But the other thing, I didn't think they'd actually enforce it. I thought no rational person would actually enforce this rule because it's so crazy that nobody would actually insist on it.
University authorities found fault with Shannon's ability to come up with a tuition and living costs that would amount to £21,000. Although Shannon said that he will work part-time jobs to finance his studies, the university did not accept his proposal. Instead, it based its judgment solely on his loan statements and parental assets. Shannon was raised by a single mother who was in bad financial situation at the time. Facing the cancellation of his acceptance, he found another solution. He decided to sue Oxford University.
The university's argument was always that unless you have the amount of money we tell you you need, you're not going to be able to complete your studies because you're going to run out of money, and that's it, you're going to have to drop out. That was always their argument. But then the closer we got to court, the more they had to reveal about how they'd actually chosen the figures they were using. So some of the figures were just nonsense.
Shannon represented himself in a lonely legal battle, finally emerging victorious. He has since graduated from Oxford and is currently working as a lawyer.
The rule that you needed to have this amount of money to be able to go has been in existence for a long time. They suggested in court about 25 years. And the figures that they provided, which were read out in the House of Parliament, were that 1,000 people per year who applied and were given offers and met the academic requirements were rejected for not being able to raise enough money.
This situation where a student's university application gets accepted only if the parents have money is not one isolated to the UK. A similar tendency can be found when looking at the income group distribution of students attending top universities in the US. Among all students enrolled in top US universities, less than 10% were from the lower income classes. In fact, students from the upper class made up 74% of the total. It's a similar situation in Korea as well. According to an analysis of top universities in 2009, students from lower income groups only made up 14%. The majority was made up of students from the upper class.
부모의 재산이 대학 진학을 결정하는 것. 이것은 세계적인 현상입니다. 그런데 교육 불평등, 특히 대학 진학에서 발생하는 불평등은 심각한 사회적 문제를 낳습니다. 바로 미래로 가는 사다리를 끊어버린다는 것입니다. 그것도 학생들 스스로가 말입니다.
Philadelphia is one of the poorest cities in the U.S. The northern side, in particular, has a high concentration of low-income black residents. Strawberry Mansion is a high school located in this area. Most of its students are from the lowest income groups. They live in a world filled with poverty and violence. The school offers them little protection from the harsh reality. According to statistics from the Philadelphia School District, only 42% of the entire cohort graduate from Strawberry Mansion with a diploma.
One thing we talk to them about all the time, that education really can change your life because it's generational for so many of them. They have a very difficult time seeing what's possible for them.
The greater the income gap between the lowest earners and the middle class, the more likely it becomes for low-income students to drop out. Education no longer gives poor students hope for the future.
It's difficult. I don't know. Well, when you're poor, you don't have many opportunities. That's just the way it is. Why is it that way? I don't know. But it shouldn't be that way when it comes to education. Everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status, should be able to have a public, free, appropriate education.
Education is the ladder that allows people to rise out of poverty into a better future. This is why education is all the more important for low-income kids. In reality, however, they are the least likely to get education. According to the U.S. government statistics from 2013, states with the greatest income disparity had the highest rate of school dropouts. The reason why this is so problematic is that the inequality doesn't end at just education. Disparity in education leads back to income disparity, creating an infinite cycle of poverty.
But when that inequality becomes entrenched, that is to say, people from different generations don't change where they are in the socioeconomic hierarchy, then you begin to have real social problems and real political problems because divisions in society harden, they become less permeable, and different groups become more resentful of other groups in society, and that can present real problems for democracy.
Forbes is a U.S. publication that keeps track of the richest people in the world. Each year, it publishes a list of the 400 richest people in the U.S. under the title Forbes 400. The sum of all the wealth owned by the people in the Forbes 400 last year came to $2,290 billion. This was greater than the total wealth owned by the 180 million people in the bottom 60% by income. It is not just in the U.S. that the richest few dominate the total wealth. Moving to a global scale, the top 1% owns more wealth than the remaining 99% combined. In fact, the wealth owned by the top 62 richest people is almost equivalent to the wealth owned by half of the world's population.
불평등은 이제 세계적인 현상이 되었습니다. 왜 이런 일이 발생하는 것일까요? 이를 심층적으로 분석한 학자가 있습니다. 바로 토마 피케티입니다. 그는 인류 역사에서 자본 수익률과 경제 성장률이 어떻게 변해왔는지 분석하여 불평등의 원인을 찾았습니다. 그렇다면 인류 역사에서 자본 수익률과 경제 성장률은 어떻게 변해왔을까요?
First, let's take a look at economic growth. Throughout the course of history, overall economic growth was lower than you imagined. From year 0 AD to 1700, the economic growth rate of mankind was just 0.1%. It was 0.5% until 1820, and just 1.5% even in 1913. However, in the next 100 years, the growth rate was 3.0%. You can see that the growth curve went up sharply. In the course of human history, the high economic growth of the 20th century was highly exceptional.
The more positive reason why the 20th century was exceptional was the very fast population growth of that period, and the baby boom cohorts and the rise of population. This is important because population growth together with fast productivity growth make the past less important. Make the wealth inequality of the past less important, because when you have...
In the late 20th century, several East Asian countries enjoyed high economic growth. However, Once they reached a certain level of technology, their growth rates began to decline as well. Advanced industrial economies also showed low growth rates in the long term, except for short spikes when recovering from recession.
When you have, if you have a 4% or 5% growth rate, then you have rising income, rising labor income in particular, so you can sort of enter the wealth game even if you start with little or no wealth at all, because this sort of high growth rate equilibrates the high rate of return to capital. But since 1980, we are back to a much lower growth rate, 1 to 2%.
On the other hand, rate of return on capital has always been 4 to 5%, regardless of the historical period. Even in traditional agrarian societies, with almost 0% economic growth, rate of return on land was 4 to 5%. The rich invested into colonies and real estate in the 19th and early 20th centuries. In the late 20th century, they invested capital into financial and energy products. Although the target of investment changed over the years, the average rate of return remained more or less constant. The rate of return on capital has always been higher than economic growth rate. This fact will remain unchanged in the future as well. Experts predict that by the year 2100, capital return rate will remain unchanged at 4%, while economic growth rate will drop to 1.5%.
Now, you're right to point out that one of the main forces that could push in the direction of rising wealth concentration in the future is the tendency for a rate of return to capital to exceed growth rate in the long run. This is, I think, the central reason why we had so much wealth concentration in the past. And I think the main explanation for this incredible concentration of wealth was indeed the fact that the rate of return to wealth was like 4 or 5% per year and the growth rate 1%.
In an era of high economic growth, people could move into higher classes by working hard and making money. However, in a period of stagnant population growth and economic growth, inherited assets play a greater role in determining one's fate. A social structure is created in which the rich get richer and the poor remain poor. This means that inequality becomes fixed in the social system.
Now, in the 20th century, we sort of forgot about this because there was very unusual events that made this different. But, in the future, there are reasons to believe that we might return to this inequality between the rate of return and the growth rate.
The greatest period of inequality in the U.S. was between the end of the American Civil War to the beginning of the Great Depression, referred to as the Gilded Age. It was when monopolies in business were introduced and the wealth was concentrated on a small minority. Newport is a symbol of this era. At the time, tycoons competed to build ever larger and grander mansions in Newport. The Breakers is by far the largest and grandest of these Gilded Age mansions. The owner of this palatial mansion with gilded walls and furniture was Vanderbilt II, a railroad tycoon. He wanted it to resemble the palaces of France.
Well, so the Gilded Age of the late 19th century, which seamlessly transformed into the roaring 1920s, the Gilded Age was really a period of vast inequality. It's the period in which we've seen the greatest concentration of wealth at the very top of the economic pyramid. Men like Rockefeller and Jay Gould and Vanderbilt, these titans of finance and industry dominated the areas of the economy where they operated.
The Gilded Age was a time of monopoly on capital, when wealth was highly concentrated, when the top 1% owned 40% of the nation's wealth. As money began to dominate politics, plutocracy began to take over the nation. Regionalism was also at its peak.
The Gilded Age offers a cautionary tale. It is possible, even in a relatively democratic society, to see the rise of something that looks more like an oligarchy. And that's what we had in the Gilded Age, and that's increasingly what it seems like we have in the United States today.
The arrival of the new Gilded Age. Many experts say that the current level of inequality is as severe as in the late 19th century. It means that there is an extreme concentration of wealth and democracy is not functioning as it should. The historical cycle in which those with capital become richer and those without get poorer. The inequality of wealth was like the destiny of mankind, a never-ending cycle. This was because throughout the course of history, the rate of return on capital has always been higher than economic growth. However, this is only when we exclude the factor of taxation. From the mid-20th century, economic growth began to overtake the rate of return on capital. This was due to high growth rates and the taxes levied onto capital.
Well, I don't think there's another way to fix the issue. I mean, taxes and increased bargaining power for ordinary workers are hard to think of another way to deal with that. Redistributes income, something that changes the bargaining power is the only way to really make a dent in it.
There are two ways to bridge the gap between capital returns and economic growth. The first is levy cumulative taxes onto profits incurred from capital to lower the rate of return on capital. The other is to boost economic growth by increasing wages.
In the 1950s, 1960s, wages, including the minimum wage, tracked productivity as it should, but that's broke. That relationship broke by the late 1970s. Productivity increases, not quite as fast, but it increases. And remember, these are matters of policy, not of economic law. And that's combined with stagnation or decline for the majority of the population. So real wages for male workers are about what they were in the late 1960s. The productivity has gone way up.
소득 격차를 줄이는 것은 저절로 이루어지지 않습니다. 정부 정책에 따라 달라집니다. 그리고 정부 정책을 결정하는 것은 바로 민주주의의 힘입니다. 그런데 우리는 흔히 정치가 경제와 분리되어 있고 민주주의는 자본주의와 별개의 것이라 생각합니다. 과연 그럴까요? 이제 민주주의와 자본주의는 어떤 관계인지 알아보겠습니다.
Capitalism operates on competition. A dollar is equal to a vote. Those who have more money get to make the decisions. On the other hand, democracy operates on equality. Every person gets one vote. Everyone participates equally in decision-making. Thus, democracy and capitalism are in opposition by nature when it comes to the processes of decision-making.
Well, so if you look at the countries in which you have both capitalism and democracy, there have always been two possible sources of tension. Will use democracy to vote themselves more. So that's one concern that can happen. The opposite concern, and it tends to be people on the political left who worry about this more, is that capitalism will swallow democracy.
Capitalism is a system with fundamental inequality at its core. In contrast, equality is the greatest value in democracy. This is why the two systems are sometimes thought to be in diametric opposition. However, capitalism actually played a decisive role in the birth and establishment of democracy.
Am Anfang hat der Kapitalismus die Menschen aus der Feudalgesellschaft, aus der Hörigkeit befreit hat sie sozusagen zu freien Menschen gemacht. Das war wichtig für die Demokratie. Es ist überall eine große Arbeiterklasse entstanden, meistens sogar die Mehrheit der Gesellschaft. Die hat für die Demokratie gekämpft, sodass dieser Kapitalismus für die Entstehung der Demokratie sehr wesentlich war.
Capitalism, which first appeared in the Middle Ages, began to take root as a new economic system in the 16th century. The capitalism born in this period that replaced feudalism was called merchant capitalism. This was because trade was the key industry that generated profits. The introduction of capitalism brought about huge changes to the social structure. The feudal class structure, where peasants were subordinate to landowners, collapsed. In the 19th century, capitalism went through yet another period of evolution. With the Industrial Revolution in England, capitalism based on industry was born. Uneducated rural farmers transformed into educated urban workers. The creation of this new social class acted to advance and bring forward democracy. Workers began to take an active role in politics, demanding the right to vote. In the late 19th century, when voting rights were granted to ordinary workers, they began to express their political dissatisfaction with capitalism. They began to call for government intervention and regulation of the social problems caused by the unequal nature of capitalism.
Markets allocate things and distribute incomes. Governments can say, no, no, no. I'm going to take this money from you and give it to somebody else. That's why these two systems are often in conflict. And they're in particular in conflict about distribution of income. Because again, if democracy really worked well, would redistribute much more income. We would have much more equality than we have.
그렇다면 시장의 가치, 자본의 가치보다 민주주의의 가치를 더욱 중시하면 어떤 결과를 낳을까요? 여기 1870년부터 2010년까지 소득 대비 자본의 비율을 나타낸 그래프가 있습니다.
There was a time in this graph where the capital to income ratio was exceptionally low. In other words, the proportion of capital in national income was the lowest, and that of wage income was the highest. This was from the 1940s to the 1980s. In this era, income was distributed equally among all classes. Average global economic growth reached 4%, the highest in human history. This era of continuous full employment, with almost no unemployment, is called the golden age of capitalism. This was when the fruits of the tree of capitalism, an achievement of mankind, were shared relatively equally among all. What made this golden age of capitalism possible? Paradoxically, this triumph of humanity was tied to the biggest human tragedy of the 20th century. On May 7, 1945, World War II came to an end in Europe with the surrender of Germany. On July 5th the same year, parliamentary elections were held in the United Kingdom. It was marked by a high voter turnout of 72%, and the race was called for the Conservative Party. This was because Winston Churchill, the hero of the war who led the nation to victory, was the head of the Conservatives. However, the result took everyone by surprise. It was a landslide victory for the Labour Party, led by Clement Attlee. This marked the birth of the Labour government.
I ask from you all support that we shall need to carry us through triumphantly through difficult years to the great era which is opening before us.
What influenced the people was the experience they had in World War II. Over the course of the war, they realized that the government was capable of effectively controlling capitalism. The Labor government swiftly passed policies for social welfare, responding to the people's call for reform.
So, over the course of the 20th century, the United States developed a system that's sometimes called the mixed economy. It was, you could say, a kind of marriage of capitalism and democracy, in which democracy checked capitalism, right? And democracies could decide collectively that certain kinds of problems had to be dealt with collectively through political processes, using political authority. Right? And this model, which maybe had its high point during this post-war period, this period after World War II, is enormously successful.
A similar phenomenon took place in the U.S. presidential elections of 1948. One newspaper had even printed a first-page headline announcing the victory of the Republican candidate, even before the votes were fully counted. The Democratic candidate at the time was incumbent President Harry Truman. However, most people believed that it would be a landslide for the Republican Party. This was because they believed the voters would want to check the Democratic Party after 16 years in power. However, the issue that took the voters was a different one. It was the New Deal policy. This policy to revive the economy by creating jobs for the unemployed and reforming the economic structure was based on active government intervention. Voters were afraid that the New Deal policy championed by the Democrats would be lost if the Republicans were to take power. This had led to Truman's victory. Although the Republican President Eisenhower took office in the next term, the New Deal remained intact until the 1970s. Unions have successfully landed in our industries. Only the smallest minority of conservatives harbor the thought of destroying unions and taking away the rights of male and female workers to join unions. This hardline pro-union statement was made by none other than the Republican President Eisenhower. Levittown in Long Island, a suburb of New York, United States, was a symbol of the prosperity that American society enjoyed in the post-war era. It was the town that President Eisenhower most wanted to show Soviet Union Premier Khrushchev on his first visit to the U.S. in the late 50s. This area used to be a potato field before it was transformed into a large residential neighborhood by housing developer William Levitt in 1947. He had built a large complex of affordable prefabricated houses for the millions of soldiers who will be coming home from the war. Homes in Levittown were soon filled with washing machines, refrigerators, and air conditioners. Each household had a car as well. Neighborhoods like Levittown soon sprung up all over the United States. Miss Barry Johnson, who has been living here since 1966, remembers what it was like.
At the time, everything was great. Everybody was working, everybody was prosperous. Sad. It was one for all and all for one. Yep. I guess somebody got sick, where they needed help. Everybody was helping.
This prosperous golden age of capitalism was made possible by the will of the people, who wanted the authority of the government to control the enormous power of capital.
제2차 세계대전 이후 시민들에게는 견제받지 않는 자본주의가 정치, 경제, 사회 모든 영역을 위협할 수 있다는 믿음이 널리 퍼져 있었습니다. 대공황을 경험한 시민들은 시장은 항상 효율적이지는 않다고 판단하게 되었고 전쟁은 국가와 시장에 대한 사람들의 생각을 완전히 뒤바꾸어 놓았습니다.
Even before the Second World War broke out, the global and American economy were caught in the throes of the Great Depression. In order to resolve the situation, the U.S. government began tightening control on the economy. This economic policy, known as the New Deal, was led by then-President Franklin Roosevelt.
For too many of us, the political equality we once had won was meaningless in the face of economic inequality. A small group had concentrated into their own hands an almost complete control over other people's property, other people's money, other people's labor, other people's lives. Against economic tyranny such as this, the American citizen could only appeal to the organized power of government.
Labor puts first things first. Security from war, food, houses, clothing, employment, leisure and social security for all must come before the claims of the few for more rent, interest and profit. We have shown that we can organize the resources of the country to win the war. We can do the same in peace.
A new era dawned after the war. Politics, rather than the market, became the primary means of resource allocation. The government began to realize the value of community, and people began to place community above the market.
I know that that after World War II, that Americans felt like they were connected by the bond of shared conflict. And indeed, Europe emerged from the ashes of the World War with a strong sense of solidarity. And that solidarity was embodied in a common project of building prosperity.
The goal to build a prosperous society had been accomplished. An economic miracle took place in Germany during this period. This allowed Germany to rise rapidly from defeat in the war to one of the wealthiest nations in the world. In France, this period is referred to as the 30 Years of Glory. The economic growth achieved during the 3 decades was nothing short of revolutionary. In the UK, this period was called the Age of Prosperity. Then Prime Minister Maurice Macmillan made this claim to his peers. Such great times will never come again. Unfortunately, this prophecy came to be reality.
영국에서는 마가렛 대처가 총리로 당선되고 미국에서는 레이건 정부가 등장하면서 역사적 흐름은 바뀌었습니다. 레이건과 대처가 주로 공격한 대상은 바로 공동체와 정부였습니다.
In an interview with a magazine in 1987, Margaret Thatcher made a famous statement. This statement emphasized the interests of individuals while denying the value of community. Before the statement, in 1981, President Reagan of the United States called for small government, balanced budgets, and deregulation.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Thatcher and Reagan both emphasized the freedom of individuals by pitting government against the individual. These statements were proclamations that the government will no longer keep capital in check.
And conservatives and the business community began to push back very hard against the systems of public policy that had developed in the post-war period, to argue for a shift towards markets, and they became very critical of government's role in the economy.
The age of liberalism dawned once more. Taxes continued to shrink along with union membership. With the fall of communism in 1990, it became problematic to public call for government control over capitalism. Thus, democracy withdrew and capital began to move out of government control. The result was the end of the golden age of capitalism. Inequality once again began to intensify.
One in which the priority of presumptively free choice on markets by consumers and presumably producers as well is taken to have priority over absolutely everything else. But it's very important that its very clearly perceptible consequence has been to sharply increase economic inequality, and in particular, as I said before, to to switch such a very large proportion of economic reward to such a tiny group of people. I think that is what is going to make that particular way of thinking politically unsustainable in the longer run. But it's a bit unsustainable in the same sort of sense as the governmental legitimacy of the People's Republic, in my view, is unsustainable.
그런데 여기서 하나 의문이 듭니다. 왜 시민들은 대처 정부나 레이건 정부의 신자유주의에 동의했던 것일까요?
Some of it may have had to do with the aftermath of the 1960s, people distrusting government more, people distrusting authority more. A lot of it was a backlash to what was seen as the extreme growth of government, social policies, and the welfare state after the Second World War.
In 1968, youths took to the streets all over the world, protesting the authority of older generations. They rallied around such slogans as "Ban the Bans," staging massive protests in Paris, New York, Berlin, and Tokyo. What they wanted was the freedom and right to express themselves without limitations. As individual liberty became the top priority, the government which repressed this freedom became the target of criticism. During this period, the personal became the political, and human rights became a hot issue in politics. However, there were side effects as well. With the expansion of individualism, people became skeptical towards the role of government.
One important consequence of that, which Jacob Hacker and I are actually writing about in the book that we're just finishing now, is that we have a very inaccurate conversation about the role of government, right? So that it is often, people often talk about it as if government, that you either have freedom or you have the government coercing you. And most people want freedom, right? But it's not actually the kind of conversation that we need to have, because you need a lot of government for people to have freedom.
A few years back, a survey on government trust was conducted on U.S. citizens at a university in the United States. The results differed hugely between the different years that the survey was taken. In 1964, more than 60% of Americans believed the government represented their interests. By 2012, that number was 19%. We are living in an age where 8 out of 10 citizens do not trust the government.
In the United States, we've forgotten why you need government, right? And how we got rich. We got rich with a lot of government and with a mixed economy. And so right now in the United States, the ideas of neoliberalism are dominant. Even among people who think of themselves as being liberal or progressive or on the left, they celebrate the individual and they understand all the good that markets do, and they don't understand why you need a lot of government.
Capitalism is based on human greed. But if greed goes beyond a certain limit, it threatens communities and the very existence of capitalism. The Great Depression of the 1930s and the global financial crisis of 2008 are good examples of this principle.
It produced a lot of damage. I think everybody knows it produced a lot of damage. Even IMF, even Mrs. Lagarde, the director of the IMF, even she says Washington Consensus, the New York Order, is dead. No, I think that this experiment, sort of the second capitalist revolution, because that's what it really was, free capitalism from democracy, I think it failed. Now, to what extent can capitalism be controlled by democratic institutions?
Then how can democracy be used to keep the greed of capitalism in check? The role of the government is crucial to keep the power of capital in check. Let's take a look at an index that shows how many people trust their government in different countries around the world. Looking at the index together with a level of corruption by country, you can see that nations with a high level of trust in government score lower on the corruption index. Northern European countries like Sweden, Norway, and Finland are examples of such countries.
Certainly the level of corruption in Northern Europe is the lowest in the world, not only of the government, but also, for example, things about avoid cheating on your taxes and various measures of trusting. By the way, Northern Europeans trust a lot, not only the government, they trust a lot each other. So they're a very trusting society. So not only trust between, say, a Swede and the government is high, but also trust among Swedes or among Danish.
How about the relationship between trust in government and economic inequality? The higher the level of trust in government, the greater the difference in income was before and after tax. This means that income redistribution through taxation is working well in these countries. The more trusted a government is, the more proactive a role it can take. This leads to reduced inequality, which in turn increases trust in the government. Conversely, in nations with a low level of trust in the government's role is reduced. This leads to increased inequality, which lowers the level of trust in government. This creates a cycle of mistrust.
So governments have to catch up, right? So they have to change their taxation structures, their regulatory structures, the way that they think about businesses, that keeps up with the way businesses themselves are evolving. In the United States, for example, and I am sure it's the same in other countries, what's really important is in a rapidly changing world where market forces are seen as being so powerful, governments have to show their citizens that they're capable of protecting them against things that they feel are threatening or dangerous, while making sure that they still promote economic growth and development.
As we face a crisis of capitalism, we have to stress the importance of government once more. However, we are not talking about a bureaucratic government.
I believe in change because I believe in you, the American people. And that's why I stand here as confident as I have ever been.
We are referring to a government based on party politics, one formed through the active participation of the people. This means that the people hold the power to suppress the greed of capitalism. This is where the importance of democracy lies.
정부는 현대 정치에서는 민주주의 하에서는 정당 정부라는 성격이 굉장히 강하다고 말을 할 수가 있는 거죠. 왜냐하면 정부는 선거의 결과로서 형성이 되는 것이고 선거를 조직하고 운영하고 하는 것은 기본적으로 정당이 대체적으로 일반적으로 하기 때문에 정당 정부의 성격을 갖는다 이렇게 말을 할 수 있겠습니다.
민주주의와 자본주의는 현대 사회를 구성하는 두 기둥입니다. 둘의 관계를 명시한 대한민국 헌법 조항이 있습니다. 한번 읽어보겠습니다. 국가는 균형 있는 국민 경제의 성장 및 안정과 적절한 소득의 분배를 유지하고 시장의 지배와 경제력의 남용을 방지하며 경제 주체 간의 조화를 통한 경제의 민주화를 위하여 경제에 관한 규제와 조정을 할 수 있다. 흔히 경제민주화 조항이라고 부르는 헌법 제119조 2항입니다. 과도한 불평등을 막고 자본주의의 탐욕을 규제하는 역할은 결국 정부가 할 수밖에 없습니다. 그리고 정부를 움직이는 것은 민주주의입니다. 이것이 바로 자본주의에 대해 민주주의가 우선해야 하는 이유입니다.
Do you know Seoul? On the banks of the mighty Hangang River rises Asia's most dynamic city, a hub of technology, culture, and finance. Seoul, the heart of Korea. Hangang River, the main river that represents Korea, runs through the central part of the Korean peninsula and flows east to west. It originates from Taebaek, Gangwon-do Province. Seoul, reduced to ashes during the Korean War, it is now home to the world-class brands Samsung and Hyundai. It's the pulsing metropolis where Psy sang his mega hit Gangnam Style. Seoul is the gateway to Asia, located between Beijing and Tokyo, and is a hub for trade and finance. Discover the subtle beauty and dazzling brilliance of Seoul, a 1,000-year-old capital which is on the cutting edge of technology, offers a glimpse of the future, and is a place of deep kindness.
It's the era of social media. There is an unusual person who has become a social media star.
애정이 많은 사람이란 생각이 들어요.
This place is just great.
강력장.
미쳐있는 남자? Comfortable sneakers, an eco bag on the shoulder and a pocketbook in the hands. Every day, this young man heads somewhere.
어디 가시나요?
저요. 오늘 전통시장 갑니다.
Who is this man who spends 365 days a year eating, sleeping, resting, and playing at traditional markets nationwide? As always, Hee-jun shows up today as well. It's a place where you can witness the lives of many warm-hearted people. This is also where Hee-jun has come every day for almost 3 years.
이 망원동 일대를 지나갈 때마다 찾아오는 시장이거든요. 전부 다 알지 못하지만 최대한 많은 분들을 알려고 노력을 하고 있습니다. 사장님, 안녕하세요. 잘 지내셨죠? 사장님 같은 경우는 망원시장에 가장 잘 어울리는 상인이라고 생각을 해요. 어머니 안녕하세요.
Everyone here knows Hee-jun.
이렇게 열심히 해주고 젊은 사람이 하는 거는 이제 이런 쪽으로는 처음 본 것 같아요.
젊은 분이 저렇게 열심히 해시려고 그러는 거 보면요. 아이고, 배겨내시지.
지나갈 때마다
Hee-jun roams every corner of the traditional market full of the warm hearts of vendors.
깔끔하고 이게 족발이 신선한 걸 쓰시니까 확실히 재료를 좋은 걸 쓰시니까.
Hee-jun is a docent who records information about traditional markets to publicize them.
전통시장 해설사는 단순히 시장의 외형적인 모습만 바라보는 것이 아니라 시장 내부의 생태계와 그리고 철학 있는 상인들의 이야기들을 대중들에게 설명하는 역할을 하고 있습니다.
Today, Hee-jun introduces a traditional market to a couple who have never been to traditional markets in Korea before.
Which colors are the most popular for Korean?
한국 사람들이 어떤 색깔을 좋아하는지 한복에서
신부들은 붉은색을 좋아하고.
Hee-jun introduces traditional markets to people who don't know much about Korean marketplaces.
And now we have hanbok.
Yeah, hanbok you made.
Really soft and beautiful.
Yeah, very beautiful. 한국의 광장시장을 찾아가더라도 광장시장의 뒷모습, 그 뒷골목에서 일어나는 한국의 진짜 모습들을 궁금해하거든요.
Introducing hidden market delicacies is also Hee-jun's role. Thanks to Hee-jun, the couple makes happy memories at a Korean traditional market.
He told everything about this place, everything that I was really curious about, I got to know. And I think I'll come back here maybe next week.
Traditional markets are disregarded because of large supermarket chains that have modern facilities and services. Hee-jun found out the cause was a lack of information and bias compared to superstores. He set out to find a way to revive traditional markets on his own.
시장에 처음 들어왔을 때 사실은 사진을 찍으면서는 파파라치로 몰리기도 해서 경찰서도 여러 번 다녀왔고요. 소금을 뿌린다든지 물을 한 바가지 끼얹어서 이 친구가 시장엔 다시는 오지 말라고 하시는 분들도 있는데요. 지금은 그분들과 대화하는 시장의 언어라는 거를 배우고 있기 때문에 충분히 대화할 수 있고 또 그분들과 어떻게 하면 상생할 수 있을지를 같이 고민하면서 저도 성장하고 있다고 생각을 하고 있습니다.
Recently, Hee-jun has begun a new endeavor. He decided to become a vendor himself in order to learn about traditional markets and publicize them properly.
사실 시장 안에 들어와서 장사를 해보지 않고서는 그 상인들의 마음을 이해할 수 없고 대중들에게 전통시장에 대해서 알려드리고 전통시장의 역사와 상인들의 숨겨진 이야기 전달하면서도 항상 부족함을 느꼈거든요.
One of the reasons that drew young people like Hee-jun to traditional markets, which have been losing ground recently, was support from the government.
전통시장을 활성화하고 청년 일자리 창출에 기여하기 위해서 전통시장 내 창업을 희망하는 청년 상인을 대상으로 창업 비용을 지원해드리고 교육이나 컨설팅, 홍보 마케팅 비용에 이르기까지 다양한 지원 사업을 진행하고 있습니다.
After becoming a vendor with the help of the government, Hee-jun has been having his hands full. He's been sharing his experience with other young people, which requires a lot of enthusiasm.
오늘도 전통시장 해설사 이희준 씨와 함께 찾아가 보겠습니다.
Hee-jun has been appearing on many shows, while his wish that many people would visit traditional markets after hearing his stories keeps growing.
제가 입어보고 사보고 먹어보지 않은 것들은 소개하지 않거든요.
모든 사람이 아니 왜 시장을 그렇게 돌아다녀? 이렇게 질문할 때 끊임없이 그 시장에 대한 사랑을 그 안에 쏟아 부을 수 있었던 용기 그것이 참 대단하다는 생각이 들고
When it comes to traditional markets, Hee-jun is willing to travel even long distances. As a mentor who inspires young people to pursue their dreams, he wants to tell them that only the sky is the limit when it comes to the growth potential of conventional markets. Hee-jun heads to a market again. Up until 3 years ago, this place was very deserted, but these days it's full of youthful energy. Since the largest youth mall in Korea was founded at this market, it has completely changed its culture.
Hi. Can I see your picture?
Yeah, this is my photography show.
Wow.
Yeah.
A foreign photographer holds an exhibition of his works at the market.
I know her.
You know her?
Yeah.
Really?
This is really weird.
Markets all over the world bring people together and help them communicate. Each time Hee-jun comes here, he makes sure to meet with a special group of people. They are young vendors who, like Hee-jun, have discovered their dreams at traditional markets and want to protect them.
잘 지냈어?
고민이 있는 게 내가 계속 여기만 머물러 있다 보니까 다른 데 청년몰들 같은 데 하시는 분들은 어떤지를 솔직히 그게 제일 고민이에요.
사실 제가 전국에 있는 사실 전통시장도 가지만 청년몰도 다 다녔잖아요.
네.
청년몰에서 상인으로서 활동하는 젊은 청년 상인들하고 네트워크가 있으니까.
These people have chosen entrepreneurship instead of employment. They have been pursuing the same dream, to succeed as traditional market vendors.
젊은 친구들이 전통시장에 들어와서 자기만의 그런 색깔로 전통시장을 살릴 수 있는 그런 역할을 충분히 할 수 있다고 생각을 하고 있습니다.
시장에 젊은 사람들이 들어와서 사업을 하고 공간을 운영한다는 것은 이 앞으로 또 다음 20년, 40년, 100년을 이끌어갈 수 있는 원동력, 그리고 기존 세대와의 연결고리 역할을 할 수 있다고 생각합니다.
The dreams of these young vendors continue to grow by the day.
가장 먼저 제가 해주고 싶은 말은 망설이지 말고 도전하라. 결코 쉽지만은 않다라는 말도 덧붙이고 싶습니다.
These young people have chosen a difficult path and risen to the big challenge. Traditional markets will thrive again because they have young vendors who connect the old and the new and bring about change. They will thrive again because they have their enthusiastic docent, Hee-jun.
저에게 있어서 전통시장이란 놀이공원입니다.
Korean traditional markets, where stories of life live and breathe.
Literally speaking, a comma in your life. Then, under a tree blowing in the wind, I look up for a long, long time, listening to the rustle of glistening leaves. Then, will you come at last?
우리가 살다가 나무 한 그루 보이면 서서 그 나무를 한번 자세히 바라보는 시간을 가졌으면 좋겠어요. 나무에 바람이 불면 바람 부는 나무가 되고, 새가 앉으면 새가 앉은 나무가 되고, 비가 오면 비가 앉은 나무가 돼요. 나무는 바라볼 때마다 완성이 되어 있고 바라볼 때마다 다릅니다. 새로운 세계를 창조해내는 거예요. 시란 바로 그런 여유를 사람들에게 새로운 세계를 꿈꾸도록, 새로운 희망을 갖도록, 마치 나무에 바람이 부는 것처럼 사람의 마음을 움직여주는 글이에요.
Contented heart only when you pause for a moment. Arirang.
Hello, it's great to have you with us at this hour. I'm Daniel Che here to give you the latest updates. Let us first begin with the headlines. The top diplomats of Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo meet for talks in South Korea. Discussions center around the outcome of the historic North Korea-U.S. summit. Top military officials of the two Koreas meet for talks as scheduled. Delegates from both sides focus on easing tensions on the Korean peninsula. The ruling Democratic Party of Korea dominates the latest local elections. Meanwhile, the leaders of the main opposition and a recently merged party stepped down to take responsibility for the disappointing outcome. We begin with a trilateral sit-down between the top diplomats of South Korea, U.S., and Japan. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo briefed the duo on the summit, and the three reaffirmed their commitment to closely coordinating to help achieve denuclearization and peace on the peninsula. Park Ki-jun has our top story.
South Korea, the U.S., and Japan will continue to maintain close cooperation to achieve North Korea's CVID.
The world should rest assured that the United States, the Republic of Korea, and Japan remain committed to achieving the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea.
South Korean Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono held a trilateral session in Seoul just 2 days after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump signed a statement agreeing to pursue complete denuclearization. At a joint press conference following the meeting, the three countries said they welcomed the adoption of the statement, in which Kim reaffirmed his commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and Trump promised to guarantee the North Korean regime's security. They said the summit is just the beginning and that Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo will continue cooperating to implement the statement. Kang and Pompeo showed a united front on their ironclad alliance as well. Kang reaffirmed that South Korea's alliance with the U.S. is stronger than ever and that U.S. forces will continue to play an important role on the Korean Peninsula.
And lastly, Secretary Pompeo and I reaffirmed that the ROK-U.S. alliance, which celebrates its 65th anniversary this year, is robust as ever, that the United States forces in Korea has played and will continue to play a crucial role for deterrence and peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula.
Pompeo also stressed that there will be no lifting of sanctions or any kind of economic benefits given to North Korea before its complete denuclearization. After wrapping up his schedule in Seoul, Pompeo will meet senior Chinese officials and possibly President Xi Jinping in Beijing to brief them on the details of the North Korea-U.S. summit. He's also expected to ask for Beijing's support for the follow-up measures to implement the joint statements before he heads back home in the late evening. Park Ki-jun, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in met separately today with top diplomats from the U.S. and Japan. The sessions were held to exchange views on the results of the historic Pyongyang-Washington summit. Hwang Ho-jun shares with us what was discussed.
Less than 48 hours since the Kim-Trump summit in Singapore, and President Moon has started what's being called his post-Singapore diplomacy, meeting with the top diplomats of Washington and Tokyo. On Thursday morning, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with President Moon to brief him directly on the summit results. According to the Blue House, President Moon congratulated the U.S. on the successful summit with North Korea as he greeted Pompeo, who himself played a key role in making that meeting happen with his trips to Pyongyang. He noted that there are mixed evaluations of the joint agreement signed between President Trump and Kim Jong-un, but said the doubters are out of touch with popular sentiment, referring to the ruling party's landslide win on Tuesday's local election. He called the joint agreement, quote, a great historic achievement.
미국, 일본, 한국인들을 비롯한 전 세계인들로 하여금 전쟁 위협, 또 핵위협, 그리고 또 장거리 미사일의 위협에서 벗어날 수 있게 했다. 이런 것만 하더라도 엄청난 가치 있는 일이었다고 생각을 합니다.
Pompeo in return said the Singapore summit was a huge first step and that Seoul and Washington need to closely cooperate to bring about better results in the future and ultimately establish lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. In fact, he asked President Moon to play a leading role in North Korea's denuclearization.
He asked President Moon to closely communicate with Chairman Kim Jong-un in the process of developing inter-Korean relations and in the denuclearization of the North in view of President Moon and Chairman Kim's amicable relationship.
Moon and Pompeo agreed that the most important thing is to ensure that the U.S. and North Korean commitments are carried out quickly and completely. Also, they agreed that Seoul, Pyongyang, and Washington could collaborate on recovering the remains of those killed in the Korean War and of those who are still missing. On Thursday afternoon, President Moon Jae-in met with Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono. According to the Blue House, the South Korean leaders shared detailed results of the two inter-Korean summits and the Pyongyang-Washington summit. They discussed how to go about negotiations with Pyongyang post-Singapore through close cooperation between South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. President Moon wanted not only to go over the outcomes of the historic dialogue in Singapore, but also to seek future-oriented bilateral cooperation with South Korea's neighbors and to make sure the declaration made by President Trump and Kim Jong-un becomes a turning point in the establishment of lasting peace on the Korean peninsula. Panmunjom, Arirang News.
The first inter-Korean high-level military talks are held for the first time in over a decade. Generals from the two sides are at the border village of Panmunjom discussing ways to ease cross-border tensions as a follow-up to the Panmunjom Declaration. Also in the background is this week's freeze-for-freeze deal between Pyongyang and Washington, in which the North promised to halt its nuclear program, and the U.S. said it would be suspending its war games in the region. Our Park Ji-won has been keeping an eye on these talks in Panmunjom. We'll go live to her now at Seoul's office for Inter-Korean Dialogue. Ji-won.
Daniel, today's talks are nearing their end at Tonilgak on the North Korean side of Panmunjom, some 50 kilometers north of Seoul. Today's talks have started at around 10 a.m. Korea time, and the 5-member delegations from each side participating, and according to South Korea's Defense Ministry Joint Press Corps, the delegations have been immersed in talks for hours now, even foregoing a lunch break. Although details of the talks are yet to be unveiled, the chief negotiators, Major General Kim Do-gyun from the South Korean delegation and Lieutenant General An Ik-san from the North Korean delegation, made their opening remarks to the media earlier in the day. Lieutenant General in North Korea is equivalent to Major General in South Korea.
As the two leaders have already presented a clear map regarding military affairs, I think both South and North Korea can achieve the expected results in these highly anticipated talks, if we discuss the issues in the firm spirit of the Panmunjom Declaration.
At this historic moment when the whole Korean nation is attempting to promote peace and prosperity, I am deeply moved to see North and South Korea's military authorities sitting down here face to face to discuss military issues in order to implement the Panmunjom Declaration.
The talks are set for one day only, and a joint agreement is expected to be announced soon. I will bring you the updates in the next newscast. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Ji-won, thank you very much for the updates so far. Washington is reportedly canceling the next combined military drills with South Korea scheduled for August. This follows a pledge made by President Trump in Singapore that he would stop America's war games in the region. According to multiple U.S. media reports, the Pentagon will formally announce the cancellation in a press release on Thursday local time. Seoul's defense ministry claims that two sides are in close coordination over that issue. The largely computer-simulated Ulchi Freedom Guardian exercise is a regularly scheduled annual combined drill. Last year, it involved over 17,000 U.S. troops alongside South Korean forces. It's already been a few days since the summit of the century wrapped up. Still, there's a lot of buzz surrounding it. One of the most talked about subjects is the video the U.S. commander-in-chief prepared for the regime's leader. Trump tried to show what a great place North Korea can become. But did the message get through? Lee Ji-won files us this report from Singapore.
There can only be two results. One of moving back, or one of moving forward.
At their summit on Tuesday, U.S. President Donald Trump presented his North Korean counterpart Kim Jong-un with a 5-minute-long video, which he also showed to the press later that day and tweeted out to the world. He called it a story of opportunity. Showing golden sunrises, gleaming skylines, and world monuments, with the North Korean flag fluttering between them, the video narrates the bright future the U.S. says awaits North Koreans in Pyongyang. But at several points mixed in are black and white images of missile launches and the regime's militarization. The point of the video was clear, to convey to Kim that he has choices, each of which comes with consequences, good or bad. Many found the video bizarre, but a North Korea expert in Singapore says the decision to play was understandable considering the president's experience in show business. But he added that it could have been seen as condescending.
Remains to be written.
It is telling Mr. Kim Jong-un in the least to imagine these scenarios. But the thing is that we need to give Mr. Kim Jong-un, as the leader of his own country, the due respect as someone who is intelligent and sophisticated and informed enough to be able to imagine for himself what the options are.
Kim's reaction to the video? Only those at the summit know, but according to Trump, Kim seemed to like it.
I showed it to him today, actually during the meeting, toward the end of the meeting, and I think he loved it. About 8 of their representatives were watching it, and I thought they were fascinated, but I thought it was well done. I showed it to you because that's the future.
In fact, the video did show consideration for its audience, with Korean text overlaid, Korean narration, and even some specifically North Korean vocabulary. Professor Ong Webb said the U.S. did not seem to have ill intentions in making the video, but he added that the execution could have been better.
And it needs to be more sensitive going forward because the whole situation is very sensitive. We know how a little word or a little deed can actually derail the whole process. Every picture and every frame has 1,000 words and can have tons of different meanings.
But regardless of what Kim thought of the video, the expert said he is certain that the North Korean leader has seen the economic and other possibilities for his people and his regime through the summit and his visit here. 이지원, Arirang News, Singapore.
Kim Jong-un took a night stroll with a couple of Singaporean ministers walking around some of the most iconic attractions of the city. What impressions did the North Korean leader get from the experience, and how would this impact his thoughts on economic development? Oh Jung-hee turned to some experts for their analysis.
In 2015, Singapore hosted a summit between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Taiwan's then leader Ma Ying-jeou. Now it's hosted another meeting that'll go down in history, the first ever face-to-face between a North Korean leader and a sitting American president. On the night before the summit, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un took a tour around some of Singapore's most iconic attractions, the Gardens by the Bay and the Marina Bay Sands. Kim's nighttime stroll on Monday resembled his right-hand man Kim Yong-cheol's trip to New York, where U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo showed him the skyscrapers outside the window. It was to send the message that economic prosperity is Pyongyang's to gain if it gives up its nuclear weapons.
Significance of it, of course, is to see what it means to develop a tourism industry, what it means to develop a hospitality industry, and what it means to develop just basically infrastructure in the center of the city that can serve as a hub, as an iconic attraction to the rest of the world. And I think that message was not lost on somebody like Chairman Kim Jong-un.
I think the more important here are not Kim Jong-un, but people who were accompanying him, his delegation, as well as North Korean media people, as well as security people. Those people have not experienced, have not seen those images of the economic development, and they saw it. And also we know that the North Korean newspaper published the photos from Singapore, so it also creates this kind of additional exposure to the outside world, to the people in North Korea.
According to Pyongyang's Rodong Sinmun newspaper, Kim has said he hopes to learn from Singapore in various ways. In what aspects would the North Korean leader be able to relate to the prosperous Southeast Asian country?
One of the major distinguishing aspects of Singaporean economic development is that it generated hugely successful economic development while its ruling party, People's Action Party, or PAP, has maintained their political dominance over decades. So although there are important differences in terms of institution, political economy, regional security environment, I'm sure there are important insights that Kim can take away.
It was Kim's first trip abroad other than China. All eyes are on what impression he got from his visit to Singapore and how that'll impact his thoughts on developing the North's economy, as well as making Pyongyang a less reclusive regime. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News, Singapore.
Some $15 million, that's how much Singapore forked up to host a summit of the century. But the benefits of it being the backdrop for the historic event may easily outweigh such cost. Media intelligence firm Meltwater estimated that the city-state may have gained $574 million worth of media and tourism exposure. The estimate is based on the advertising value online media mentions related to the summit, including phrases like Trump, Kim, Singapore, or Sentosa. Hotels gained the most attention with over 20,000 articles mentioning the Capella, where the hotly watched meeting was held. The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization is willing to provide technological help to verify the closure of North Korea's nuclear test sites. Lasina Zerbo, the executive secretary of the CTBTO, told Japanese newspaper Asahi Shimbun that the organization is willing to approach North Korea directly if it decides to take part in the UN General Assembly treaty that prohibits unapproved nuclear tests. He highlighted the need to take full advantage of this change created by the North Korea-U.S. summit to lead Pyongyang towards signing the CTBT. Over at the nation's top office at today's press briefing, its spokesperson read out a statement from President Moon Jae-in expressing his appreciation for the landslide election victory given to his ruling Democratic Party of Korea.
I'm overwhelmed by your support, the highest voter turnout in 23 years for a local election. I know this does not mean you think everything in this country has been run perfectly, but despite our faults and shortcomings, you've put your faith in us, and for that we humbly thank you.
The Liberal leader also wrote that he will not allow the victory to make him prideful or complacent. Moon vowed to put his fellow Koreans first, adding there's still a long way to go until all his campaign promises are fulfilled. In stark contrast, the leader of the main opposition party and co-leader of the Bareunmirae party have decided to step down from their posts following the results of the local elections on Wednesday. Could this be an indication of a shift in the nation's political environment? Seo Bo-bin tells us more.
The main opposition Liberty Korea Party chief Hong Jun-pyo and minor opposition Bareunmirae Party co-leader Yoo Seung-min resigned on Thursday after their parties suffered a crushing defeat in South Korea's local elections held on Wednesday. In separate press conferences, both leaders said they'd take responsibility for the election defeat and that they respected people's choice. In Wednesday's election, the main opposition won only 2 out of the 17 posts for mayor and provincial governor and just won only 1 parliamentary seat in the by-elections. The minor opposition party didn't win a single seat in the by-election. The biggest victory was claimed by the ruling Democratic Party of Korea, taking home 14 posts out of the 17 posts for mayors and governors and dominating the heavily populated areas of Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province. It also captured strong conservative regions like Ulsan, Busan, and Gyeongsang-namdo province, with the exception of just 2 regions. As for the Liberty Korea Party, the floor leader Kim Sung-tae will serve as the acting chief for the meantime. Kim plans to hold an emergency meeting of the party officials to discuss post-election strategy. Seo Bo-bin, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, another hike is decided by the U.S. Fed, once again by its usual 25 basis points. A decision reportedly made as America's economy is finally picking up a head of steam after several years in the doldrums. Kim Hye-sung help us look beyond the digits.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has raised its benchmark interest rate for the second time this year by a 0.25 percentage point to a range of 1.75% to 2%. It's the 7th hike since 2015. The Fed also dropped its pledge to keep rates low enough to stimulate the economy for some time, reflecting a U.S. economy that's getting stronger.
Economic growth appears to have picked up in the current quarter, largely reflecting a bounce back in household spending. Business investment continues to grow strongly, and the overall outlook for growth remains favorable. Fiscal policy is boosting the economy. Ongoing job gains are raising incomes and confidence.
Quarterly economic projections released at the meeting show Fed officials expect the economy to grow 2.8% this year, up 0.1% from its forecast in March. And a majority of policymakers say they now expect a total of 4 interest rate increases this year after they had been split about whether to raise rates 3 or 4 times. U.S. unemployment fell to 3.8% in May, the lowest since 2000, signaling the Fed is at or near its maximum employment goal. Inflation is also snapping into line with fresh projections Wednesday indicating it would run above the Fed's 2% target, hitting 2.1% this year and remaining there through 2020. In recent months, emerging economies have been seeing capital outflows and their currencies weaken against the stronger greenback, contributing to currency crises in countries such as Argentina, Turkey, and Brazil.
The European Central Bank is set to meet Thursday to discuss when to end its bond purchasing program. All this global monetary tightening is increasing volatility in some emerging markets. As for now, South Korea has strong fundamentals like ample foreign reserves to stave off a rapid capital outflow. But with the U.S. set for 2 more rate hikes, whether that continues remains to be seen.
The U.S.-Korea rate gap has now widened from 0.25% in March to 0.5%, and that's putting more pressure on the Bank of Korea to raise interest rates later this year. 김혜성, Arirang News.
It comes around only once every 4 years. For the millions of football fans around the world, the wait is finally over. The World Cup starts tonight with the host nation Russia taking on Saudi Arabia. Our Jong-un fills us in on what to expect when the whistle is blown for the kickoff all the way from Moscow.
Russia has spent more than 8 years getting ready for the 2018 World Cup. And finally, the curtain will be raised on Thursday at 5:30 p.m. local time at Moscow's famous Luzhniki Stadium. Russia's largest sporting arena was built in the 1950s and has since hosted many international sporting events, including the 1980 Moscow Olympics. In 2013, the original stadium underwent renovations for the World Cup. 3,000 more seats were added, bringing the total capacity to 81,000. While the country has done a tremendous job to prepare for the World Cup in terms of facilities, one of the main concerns is the expected influx of tens of thousands of international football fans to some of the host nation's regional cities, which will have never seen so many foreign tourists before. But Russians are optimistic. Their nation can pull off a successful World Cup and send fans home happy with memories that will last a lifetime.
The people sometimes can look sad, so not that like this face, but in their soul they really friendly.
It's an amazing place to be now because it's a super energy around everywhere. People are very hospitable. They love events. They are making great events. They like to have fun.
The opening ceremony for the 2018 World Cup will have a slightly different format compared to previous editions of the tournament. This time, the ceremony will focus on musical acts and take place much closer to kickoff, just half an hour before the start of the opening match between Russia and Saudi Arabia. British music icon Robbie Williams and celebrated Russian soprano Aida Garifulina will entertain the crowd in the stadium and the hundreds of millions of people watching around the world. After the pre-match entertainment, the trophy the teams are all battling for will be brought in by Brazil's 2-time World Cup champion, Ronaldo. When the curtain is raised, 32 teams will compete over the next months for a place in the final at the Luzhniki Stadium on July 15th. Jong-un, Arirang News, Moscow.
Let's fast forward to the 2026 World Cup now. The United States, Canada, and Mexico will play host together. The 3 North American countries beat their bidding rival Morocco by 134 votes to 65 on Wednesday at the 68th FIFA Congress. This will be the first time the global sporting event is hosted by 3 countries and also the first time a 48-team format is used, a big change from the current 32. The U.S. will host 60 games, including the finals, while Canada and Mexico will each have 10 games.
Hello, Michelle Park here with the latest weather update. The opening ceremony for the Russia 2018 World Cup is just a few hours away. It takes place in Moscow's Luzhniki Stadium, which will have dry weather with mostly cloudy skies and a mild temperature of around 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. Now, most of the showers here have cleared, except along the east coast, which can't expect on and off showers until tomorrow morning. The sky will get a lot clearer during the day tomorrow. Now, the morning temperatures are about 10 degrees cooler compared to our daytime highs, so waking up to 18 degrees Celsius, and Daegu and Gyeongju beginning at 16 and 17 degrees respectively. And between 2 and 5 p.m. is when we have the highest levels of ozone and also high UV levels as well. Now, Seoul hits up to 28 degrees, Gwangju 29, whereas Busan is considerably cooler at 23 degrees. Now, the weekend will also be hot and sunny, so take good care to protect yourselves from the heat. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all from us at this hour, but we'll be back with more updates at 8 p.m. Korea time. Hope to see you then. Goodbye for now.
我的名字刘以豪，今年31岁，我来自台湾，我的职业是演员。我私底下的样子，跟我的狗玩，沙发上发呆，赖床。大家可能不知道，还有另一个我。跟着我一起来认识这充满活力的台北。 一起走吧。挑一套适合自己的衣服，穿出个人风格，自信就是时尚。来逛街吧。饿了吗？这里有很多好吃的，这是最近最热门的地方，用美食为自己充电。 还有一样让我感到非常幸福的，那就是音乐。听音乐的时候，是我最放松、开心、自在的时刻。最后，让我感到幸福的，就是一直陪伴在我身边、为我加油的粉丝们。 因为有他们热情的支持，我才能获得力量，和粉丝们一起共度充满欢乐的时光。我的能量泉源来自这里。
Arirang。 exhibition, The Squatters, I'm talking about especially urban plants. By focusing on these small plants, I'm trying to reveal the resilience of life.
가장 중요한 거는 뭐 워낙에 두 분 다 대단하신 연주자니까 그 시너지가 어느 정도까지 나올까 상당히 기대되는 그런 조합이었거든요. 많은 분들한테 그 음악의 아주 풍성함과 또 즐거움을 한꺼번에 들 수 있을 거라고 생각을 합니다.
책을 처음 이제 받아들었을 때부터 이 책을 내가 다시 어떻게 만들어 나갈지 계획을 하고 100여 가지가 넘는 과정을 거치면서 책을 탄생을 시키는 그런 작업을 하는 게 가장 큰 매력이에요.
On a warm spring day, we encountered the works of artist Kim Jae-in at a weed-ridden gallery. His artistry is filled with weak yet tenacious and strong city weeds. And Kim focuses on the way weeds harmonize with the lives of people.
By focusing on these small plants, I'm trying to reveal the resilience of life, but also at the same time, I'm using them as metaphors related to people's lives, people's lifestyles, also living in harsh environments, trying to survive as individuals.
Weeds live on cold and thick concrete, which is an uninviting place. The artist focuses on the plants with resilient life force.
I thought the contrast between the urban environment, the gray cement environment, and the green life sprouting out from the unexpected locations was interesting. As a person who also lives in an urban environment, I thought that these plants somehow represented how people live. It actually has a kind of duality. It represents nature, but at the same time it represents, including humans, a figure or someone living in maybe not so friendly environment, trying to survive in its own terms.
Kim has been focusing on urban plants for quite some time. He even depicted the resilient life force of weeds, which managed to survive despite all the hardships through his performance art. The artist says that weeds portray the stories of human beings.
I thought this plant stays there in the office 24 hours a day. It's not an obvious job, but the plant is there serving some duty, aesthetic function, or providing a little bit of oxygen to the work environment. So I thought this plant is actually working more night shifts than I am. I thought that was interesting. At the same time, I'm projecting a kind of empathy to the plant. I'm comparing it to myself.
Kim's artistry began with his sympathy for green things that live together with humans. Kim has always been observing the weeds surrounding him. Although nobody knows where these plants originated, they are still beautiful. Each individual object and leaf becomes a source of inspiration. The weeds in the city have never been planted. Nobody waters them or pays any attention. However, they keep coming up. Neither the power of humans nor the weapons we have will be able to destroy them completely.
Do I welcome the squatters? Yes, squatters are very welcome in my yard. I'm interested in the coexistence, the ecological balance between species, in whether it's in my backyard or whether it's in nature. So they're very welcome.
These weeds are merely plants, nothing more. However, when artist Kim pays attention to them, they become beautiful pieces of art. From the classical period to the romantic and modern eras, Korean violinist Baek Ju-young and Finnish virtuoso Ralph Gothoni take the audience on a virtuosic journey.
오프스 마스터 시리즈는 아주 훌륭한 음악가들을 한국의 청중들한테 보여드리는 그런 목적으로 시작이 됐고요. 가장 중요한 거는 뭔가 특별한 게 있어야 돼요. 왜냐하면 이전의 거를 똑같이 반복하는 거는 사실 저한테 별 의미가 없거든요. 두 분이서 많이 연주를 했었어요. 그러니까 앙상블 내에서. 그러면서 서로 간의 음악적인 성취하고 음악적인 여러 가지 이야기를 계속해서 풀어왔고 그런 과정을 통해 가지고 이제 두 분이 이제 우리 둘이서 뭔가 사람들한테 얘기할 때가 됐다라고 생각을 하는 순간이 있습니다.
Baek creates sensuous and shrill sounds with her violin.
We have played already before together, and it has been always a pleasure to play with her. You are so great musicians, and Mrs. Baek is one of them, really, the great Korean instrumentalist. So it's a great pleasure, of course.
Gothoni amazes the audience with his crisp yet touching sounds.
제가 랄프 고토니 선생님하고 여러 번 실내악을 같이 연주했었고 그때 정말 너무 훌륭한 피아니스트셔서 제가 존경하게 됐는데 훌륭한 피아니스트하고 할 수 있게 돼서 저는 너무 영광이고 너무 정말 기쁘고요.
Violin Sonata No. 32 in B-flat major is widely regarded as the best violin sonata written by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
Mozart is always needs always an incredible sensitivity and easiness and lightness and sovereignty about all kind of problems. So we have to have wings and fly very easily in this world.
The two performers take the audience to new levels of classical music with their incredible skills.
'79 was the first time, so it's rather long, history which I have seen of Korean music life, and the development has been incredible what has happened here. And it's always a very happy thing to play with Korean musicians because the level is very high.
Sonata No. 2 for violin and piano by Alfred Schnittke with the polystylistic technique is a highly technical and experimental piece.
우리가 단순히 옛날의 것을 잘 연주한다. 물론 이것도 굉장히 중요하죠. 근데 그건 재현이고 새로운 것을 발굴해서 찾아낸다. 이거는 개척 정신입니다. 음악이라는 거는 이 두 가지가 같이 공존을 할 때 의미가 있다고 생각을 해요.
Schnittke created a postmodern characteristic called polystylism, which literally refers to the multiple uses of styles and themes in the music.
관객들께서 반응이 어떨지 사실 궁금하기도 한데 굉장히 강렬한 감격을 받았었어요. 항상 그 관객들이. 그래서 충격? 신선한 충격이라고나 해야 되나요? 소리의 그 화성보다는 소리의 색깔 그리고 바이올린과 피아노로 낼 수 있는 여러 가지 예를 들면 바이올린은 글리산도로서 막 귀신 나오는 소리 같은 걸 막 한다던가 아니면 피아노는 톤 클러스터 같은 걸 이렇게 쳐서 굉장히 효과적으로 막 드라마틱한 그런 음향을 낸다던가 하는 그런 기법 많이 사용해서 굉장히 전체적으로는 강렬한 그런 곡이고요.
In my opinion, it's very important to bring him to Korea so that your audience also experience the difference of the music and the tensions between Mozart and Schnittke. The tension in the history between two centuries.
Peck's fierce sounds were lavishly praised by Krzysztof Penderecki, one of the greatest living maestros.
이 파가니니 곡은 정말 기교의 거의 극한을 보여주는 그런 아주 모든 사람들한테 아주 후련한 그런 느낌을 줄 수 있는 아주 호쾌한 곡이고요.
This piece requires an extreme level of skill, but still presents beautiful and touching sounds. It is an ultimate feast for the audience's ears.
모든 바이올린이 할 수 있는 테크닉을 다 동원해서 어렵기도 하지만 그래도 하면서 사실 재미있는 점도 많이 있고요. 테크닉적인 면도 잘 감상하셨으면 좋겠어요.
There is this Paganini, which is more for violin, a virtuosic piece, shows all the difficulties what you can do with violin. And Mrs. Beck, of course, does them incredibly well.
Let your soul feast on the sensitive and passionate sounds created by two of the greatest living treasures of our time.
저는 언제나 음악이 행복했으면 좋겠어요. 음악을 들으시면서 또 그걸 즐기셨으면 좋겠고 너무 어렵게 듣지도 마시고 또 너무 이렇게 무시하지도 마시고 그냥 즐겁게 행복하게 들어주세요.
E-books are so convenient that they can be read whenever and wherever because they are so small and portable. However, there's a romantic and nostalgic attachment to the smell of a book and the look of its tattered pages, which can never be replaced.
책을 견고하게 만들어서 오래 보존하는 일련의 작업들을 이제 예술재본이라고 보통 칭하고요. 산업화되기 이전에 사람들이 일일이 손으로 만들던 그런 방법으로 책을 만들기 때문에 사실 요즘은 보기 힘든 방법들로 책을 만든다고 볼 수 있죠.
Designer Cho Hyo-eun is the owner of Korea's first bookbinding art atelier. She recreates old books beautifully after disassembling and repairing them. People come to her atelier for their own special reasons.
아버님이 이제 서가 정리를 하시다가 옛날에 굉장히 좋아하셨던 책인데 발견을 하셨대요. 좋아하시면서 따님한테 이제 선물을 주셨는데 따님께서는 이제 얼마 후면 아버님 생신이라서 이거를 제본을 새로 해서 아버님께 선물을 드리고 싶다고 의뢰를 하셨어요. 책을 분해하다 보니까 이 부분이 굉장히 이렇게 많이 찢어져 있더라고요. 이렇게 찢어진 부분을 보수하는 용도의 티슈가 있어요. 붙였을 때 글씨도 그대로 다 보이게 보수를 할 수 있고.
Bookbinding art is often compared to architecture. It's because bookbinding requires dozens of procedures while disassembling and rebinding books. Over 50 tools are used to rebind a book, and sometimes the designer has to go over 100 procedures. Therefore, the time required for rebinding ranges from a week to a year. In addition to bookbinding techniques, bookbinding artists should also have a good knowledge of both the humanities and art.
이 책은 모리스 르블랑의 기암성이라는 책인데요. 디자인은 물음표랑 느낌표를 이용을 해서 이 내용이 책에 나오는 어떤 암호문의 내용이거든요. 그 암호문들을 이용을 해서 금박을 일일이 찍었고요. 제목도 금박으로 같이 마무리를 했고요.
The design and method of bookbinding vary depending on the number of pages and its usage. Bradel binding is a style of bookbinding with a hollow back. It allows people to open books at a 180-degree angle and is particularly suited for thin books. Stab stitch bookbinding lashes the holes near the spine together with a needle and thread, appealing to the eye as well.
제본가는 이 책 한 권을 위해서 노력을 해온 종이를 만드는 사람이나 인쇄공, 일러스트를 그린 일러스트레이터나 편집자, 작가까지 그 모든 사람의 노력을 한 권의 책으로 다시 완결을 시켜주는 그런 작업을 하기 때문에 그 부분에 있어서는 많이 매력을 느낄 수 있어요.
Designer Jo feels the biggest thrill when she encounters new books. For her, the secondhand bookshop is a treasure box.
제본을 새로 했을 때 현저히 상태가 좋아질 수 있거나 아니면 그만큼 의미가 있는 책이 있으면 상태가 안 좋더라도 일단은 좀 골라서 가지고 있다 보면은 또 재본을 할 수가 있으니까요. 그리고 제가 좋아하는 작가나 그런 작가의 뭐 초판본이 있다거나 그런 걸 발견하면은 기쁘게 골라서 사가지고 가죠.
As Jo often works with old books, she doesn't incorporate the latest trends. Instead, she focuses on the contents and characteristics of the books.
예를 들면 낭만주의 시대 작가의 낭만주의 이제 사조의 책이라고 하면 그 책을 디자인하기 위해서는 그 시대에 유행했던 장식적인 문양들이라던가 그 시대에 사용이 되었던 마블지 종이라던가 그런 흐름이 있기 때문에 그런 거를 제가 이제 골라서 디자인에 반영을 하죠.
Beyond just giving a beautiful practical touch to books, Jo enhances their value with her designs. She says beauty should never be neglected during the process of making books durable.
요즘은 인터넷이나 이런 그 전자적인 디지털 문화가 많이 있잖아요. 하지만 그런 문화 이전에 우리가 지금 흔히 얘기하는 아날로그 문화는 그 시대에는 그거밖에 없었던 시절이고 그 시대에서 책 자체를 후대로 전수해주는 역할의 가장 중요한 부분을 담당하는 게 재본가이기 때문에 그런 측면에서는 보람을 좀 느낄 수 있다고 볼 수 있죠.
Through the artistry of bookbinding artists, book lovers are able to feel the joy of possessing one-of-a-kind books forever.
What are other reporters from international press companies saying about what's happening here in Korea? Correspondents from around the world sit down and discuss issues in and out of Korea. From exclusive backstories to personal opinions, understand current affairs from a fresh new angle. Keep yourself up to date with the latest news through a detailed and engaging conversation on Foreign Correspondents. Scientific research and technology has been developing at an exponential rate, but with the rapid growth, new issues have also been raised. This 5-part documentary series will take you through 5 key areas in scientific innovation that will affect the near future. From GMO crops and solar energy to genetic mutations and the way we store and process information, we'll cover all the major themes and more on the 5 keys. Travel shows are all the rage these days, and we have about 20 million foreign tourists visiting Korea each year. So what exactly do they want to do here? To help us out, we have YouTubers from China, USA, and Spain, each discovering their own traveling course and sharing it with all our viewers. 3 different travelers, 3 different courses, and 3 different trips unravel on Mystery Travelers.
Just to the south of the capital Seoul lies an attractive city called Suwon. It is the home of the elegant Hwasong Fortress, designated as a World Heritage, and is considered one of the most innovative architectural works from the 18th century. The Joseon dynasty's remarkable King Jong-un, a reformer and a scholar committed to the modernization of Korea, had the Hwasong Fortress built as attribute to his father, Prince Sado, a victim of political intrigues at the time. The castle was a powerful military fortress that employed the most advanced technology of the era and has a delightful symmetry in its design. There is a temporary palace next to the castle where King Jong-un stayed while visiting his most favorite place in the country. Every year, a festival is held here to honor the culture vision of King Jong-un. The festival features many games and events and the culture of the Joseon dynasty.
Hello, you're watching Arirang News, coming to you from Seoul. I'm Kwon Jang-won. Thank you for joining us. US President Donald Trump has declared that there is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea after the first ever summit with the regime. However, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is having to defend the joint declaration that was signed by Trump and Kim after critics continue to point out its shortcomings, namely the absence of the term verification. Pompeo says it's implied in the term complete denuclearization, to which Kim has agreed. We'll be joined by an expert here in the studio to discuss these issues in just a bit. But first, Pompeo made his way direct from Singapore to Seoul on Thursday to brief his South Korean and Japanese counterparts on the outcome of the summit. After their meeting, they held a joint press conference where they reiterated their continued efforts in dealing with North Korea. Let's take a look at some of what they had to say.
The three of us welcomed the adoption of the joint statement in Singapore. This is the first time that the highest authority of North Korea promised the President of the United States to work towards the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which we believe has bolstered the political momentum for action to resolve the North Korean nuclear issue. We shared our understanding that the June 12th summit is not the end, but a new beginning towards a denuclearized and peaceful Korean Peninsula.
The discussions we held today amongst the three of us reflect our three countries' commitment to continue working together towards the ultimate success of this effort. The world should rest assured that the United States, the Republic of Korea, and Japan remain committed to achieving the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea.
North Korea reaffirmed its commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, while the United States is committed to provide a security guarantee to North Korea. We understand that the United States will advance the discussion on provision of security guarantees while carefully monitoring whether North Korea takes concrete steps to fulfill its commitment to denuclearization. And we also note that no security guarantees have been given yet.
Now, joining us now to discuss that press conference between the foreign ministers, as well as looking back on the North Korea-U.S. summit itself, is Dr. Bong Young-sik from the Yonsei Institute for North Korea Studies. Dr. Bong, it's good to have you with us again.
Pleased to be here again.
Now, let's start with some of the details from that press conference. Once again, Mike Pompeo, as well as actually Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono, talked about CVID, complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization. However, we all know now that it wasn't included in the final declaration that was signed between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. Pompeo has tried to justify it, saying that the phrase complete denuclearization includes verification implicitly. What do you say to that?
Well, it is a very high task for Secretary Mike Pompeo to persuade the rest of the world, including America's allies in Asia, such as Japan and South Korea, that the phrase complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which is written in the very short joint statement issued by Mr. Kim Jong-un and Mr. Donald Trump, is sufficient to mean CVID. But we see a lot of loose ends in the summit meeting held by the two leaders on the 12th in Singapore, because the CVID, the exact word, was highlighted and emphasized by the Trump administration itself as the ultimate measuring stick of success for the summit meeting with North Korea. Remember that Secretary Mike Pompeo himself, in his press conference prior to the summit meeting, emphasized that CVID remained as the ultimate and unyielding goal of the Trump administration. And he even iterated that verification remains as the most crucial element in the outcome of the summit meeting. But none of those elements was clearly fleshed out in the letter of the joint statement. So if you just give the best benefit of the doubt to the Trump administration and the North Korean government, then the United States government might have gotten the very strong assurance from Chairman Kim Jong-un that because of the inherent limitations of the leadership of North Korea, that the exact wording of the CVID could not be actually written in the joint statement, but Kim Jong-un might have given very strong assurance to his counterpart, President Donald Trump, that CVID would be quickly and immediately taken by North Korea outside the scope of the letter of the joint statement. So we have to wait and see what kind of actions in the direction of CVID North Korean leadership is going to take after the summit meeting. If North Korea does not take any immediate actions that verifies that the North Korea shows the genuine intentions of the denuclearization, then unfortunately the summit meeting on the 12th should be regarded as a big disappointment, especially for the United States.
Well then, actually, how important is having the words verifiable and irreversible in the statement? If, as you say, Kim seems to have convinced Trump and Pompeo that he really will carry out denuclearization, what's the difference between having it in the statement and not in the statement?
Well, I'm not a spokesperson of the Trump administration, but it seems like President Trump believed that the summit meeting went really well without any pretentious gesture, that the phrase complete denuclearization includes all those elements, the complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement. But in order to facilitate the CVID as a process, it made a more strategic sense for the United States to give the benefit of doubt to the North Korean regime by not insisting upon inclusion of the exact phrase in the joint statement, but just a way for North Korean regime to actually take their actions in the direction of CVID. So having the right outcomes must be more important than insisting upon the inclusion of the exact phrase of CVID in the statement. So if the United States is going to see very clear actions taken by Kim Jong-un government of North Korea for CVID step by step, then Trump administration could easily defend its position that the summit meeting was a spectacular success. So only time will tell which side is correct.
I guess we have to give them some amount of trust. I think that's what they're trying to see. I think that's also a point that Kang Young-hwa and Kono also mentioned today, that they stress that this summit and this declaration is only the start. They seem to imply that the declaration, that more will be built from it. But the question is the statement a strong enough foundation for them to build on?
At least the Trump administration must think so. I guess it is a personal belief of U.S. President Donald Trump that the wording of the joint statement does not really matter, as long as the United States maintains the sufficient capability to pressure and punish Pyongyang if the North Korean regime will not take concrete steps toward the CVID after the summit meeting. Then, as long as the United States maintains the capability to put the existing economic sanctions in place, if not imposing more harsh economic sanctions, if North Korea is not going to take any immediate and clear activities of denuclearization, then the wording of joint statement does not really matter. And since both leaders agreed to exchange visits, then Mr. Trump might have thought that there will be many more opportunities to clarify each other's positions regarding exchange in benefits, denuclearization of North Korea, and the security assurance for North Korea by the United States in the next summit meetings. So, as Trump emphasized prior to the meeting, this is just the first bite in the apple, though it's just the beginning of the long process.
U.S. Secretary of State Pompeo went straight from Singapore to Seoul to brief his counterparts, Kang Young-hwa and Taro Kono. I guess we can see from that it's he's sending a message that he finds he values the cooperation of these allies closely. But at the same time, reports definitely seem to suggest that South Korea and Japan weren't given prior notice to Trump's announcement that they were going to suspend military joint drills. What should be made of this? How can they take this?
What should be made of this? This is just a continuity of the America First policy of the Trump administration. It's a hallmark of the Trump administration in its conduct of foreign policy, even with regards to America's alliances, not only in Asia but also in Europe. That not having the prior consultations with South Korea and Japan about exchanging views on suspension or even termination of the regular massive joint military exercises between U.S. military and South Korean military is a big blow to a security partnership between Seoul and Washington. There's no doubt about it. And the phrases that President Trump used to explain this, such as these exercises are provocative and expensive, these are exactly the kind of expressions used by not South Korea, but North Korea in its long-standing protest to a hostile policy taken by Seoul and Washington. So I guess President Trump was persuaded by Mr. Kim Jong-un on this point. And it also shows that everything is transactional. Everything is calculated in terms of saving American taxpayers money, even it comes down to alliance relations with Asian partners for this administration. But if the United States continues to insist upon unilateralism or transactional approaches to security matters toward Asian allies and the European security partners, such as NATO members, then the soft power of the United States will eventually diminish and it will hurt the standing and influence of the United States in the long run. It is totally up to the Trump administration to the right calculation about the ups and downs of this America First policy.
There's actually some suggestion that actually the drills is not actually stopping the drills is not that big a deal, that it's been done before in previous agreements, and they can actually be restarted at any time. It's just a suspension, not scrapping the US forces Korea, for example. Do you think this has some weight, this argument?
I would like to accept that explanation because who knows that this is only a temporary suspension in parallel with North Korea taking concrete steps toward the denuclearization. And who would say no to maintaining, freeze-to-freeze, at least for a while, that North Korea does not conduct any additional missile or nuclear tests, and the South Korea and the United States stops military exercises as long as North Korea maintains no provocations. But the problem is that there is no prior consultations or detailed explanations given by Washington to Seoul and Tokyo before President Trump made this abrupt remark off the cuff at the press conference after the summit meeting in Singapore. So lack of consultation and the way that the US president described all this decision as war games or provocative, expensive. And he even expressed his intention that he would like to bring back all US soldiers back home because South Korea and Japan do not seem to assume appropriate defense spendings. This hurts. These words hurt the security partnership between US and Asian allies.
Well, there's so much more to talk about, but unfortunately we're out of time today. But thank you for coming in as usual and sharing your insights.
You're welcome.
And that brings us to the end of our show. I'll be back tomorrow, but do stay tuned to Arirang throughout the day for all of the latest updates from Korea and around the world. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Ghent, the city of free-whelming charm created by the blend of art and culture. Music, the free form of art. The world I see becomes the lyrics.
Having again my favorite dream. I want you, baby, want you. Reasons I cannot explain. There's some part of me wants to see Graceland.
The freeness of my soul becomes the melody. The music I make, the way nature orders me and the way time flows is spontaneous, but not artificial. Free, but not frivolous. Everything that excites me becomes music. Hongdae area, the place I reach following the tune of music. Music's passion and warmth has moved my heart. Music brings each and every person closer. My heart's passion is revived through music. My passion explodes now in this venue. Now it's your turn to show passion.
Arirang.
Busan Metropolitan City is Korea's #2 city and top port city located in the southeast. Facing Korea and Japan on the strait, it is the center of overseas trade. Busan is a beautiful international port city. It has a history of 1,700 years. Trading activity has increased in modern times, and it has become a hub port of Northeast Asia. Gwangan-daegyo Bridge is a suspension bridge that has a beautiful two-layer structure. The Busan Fireworks Festival is held annually on the bridge in the fall and brings joy to many Busan visitors. East of Gwangan-daegyo Bridge is Sentum City, where there are many skyscrapers. With the ocean in the background, the high-tech city has a futuristic vibe. The Busan International Film Festival is Asia's largest international film festival. It is spread across Busan Cinema Complex in the fall every year. The Busan International Film Festival has a 20-year history. At Yongdusan Park in Busan, the Busan Tower overlooks the harbor. Foreign tourists love visiting the beautiful Busan Harbor.
Cheongsan in Gangwon-do province is surrounded by layers of mountains. The stories of difficult lives spent on cultivating rough lands were made into songs sung by the people. Songs come out naturally when life is full of joy, but people also sing when there are hardships.
서산에 지는 해가 지고 싶어지나.
Cheongsan had been an isolated area in the Baekdu-daegan mountain range since times of old. The men grew old as they fought against the rough land.
반찬을 맛을 몰라 못 먹나 사절치.
The women lived such poor lives that it was said that they couldn't even eat 8 kilograms of rice before they got married.
잔소 아리랑.
Whenever their work was hard, their stomachs were empty. Their relationships ended in separation. Their loved ones were missed, and their resentment grew. The people sung Arirang with their whole hearts.
정말 희노애락이 다 들어있어요. 완전히 정선 사람들한테 아라리는 완전 녹아져서 삶의 일부분이었던 거고요. 모아놓은 것들 따지면 뭐 6천수, 뭐 만수 그런 거는 뭐 충분할 것 같아요.
So when did these songs filled with diverse stories begin? The most widely known origin story is that 7 courtiers who had opposed against the founding of the Joseon dynasty abandoned the outside world and lived here, and that their story was made into a song and gave birth to Jeongseon Arirang. In this representative song of Jeongseon Arirang, the dark clouds of Mansusan Mountain are said to signify the soldiers of Lee Seong-ge. This was an isolated land where the 7 courtiers came to live in. How did Jeongseon Arirang spread throughout the country? Aoraji Lake in this area was named after how 2 streams formed a harmony to become one. The water connected here becomes Donggang River, which then flows into Hangang River. In the summer of every year, a raft festival is held here. At times when lumber was scarce, the lumber of Jeongseon was made into rafts and transported to Hanyang through the river. 84-year-old Mr. Han Sang-yeol, the last raft carrier, remembers the events from then.
기상들이 술을 떼다 싣고 올라와요. 지금 올라와가지고 저 집으로 가자고 막 붙들고 막 그런 식이 있었어요. 항생을 된 고가리
420 kilometers of waterway lie between Jeongseon and Hanyang. Wherever the raft carriers stayed, drinks and songs followed, and these songs spread out to give birth to arirangs throughout the country. One summer, a couple had to be separated over the Aoraji River when it was flooded. The song that was made became a representative song of Jeongseon Arirang.
우리 민족의 아이콘인 거죠. 민족 아이콘, 문화 아이콘이 돼서 삶의 어떤 그 정서적인 측면을 담아내는 아리랑이야말로 계속적으로 어떻게 보면 판소리처럼 유지를 계속할 수 있는 전통적인 문화 자산이 아닐까 생각이 듭니다. With subjects on the hardships of labor, the pain of separation, and the humor of daily life.
The songs of Cheongseon Arirang are continuing on through the voices of the people.
我的名字刘以豪，今年31岁，我来自台湾，我的职业是演员。我私底下的样子，跟我的狗玩，沙发上发呆，赖床。大家可能不知道，还有另一个我。跟着我一起来认识这充满活力的台北。一起走吧。挑一套适合自己的衣服，穿出个人风格，自信就是时尚。来逛街吧。饿了吗？这里有很多好吃的，这是最近最热门的地方，用美食为自己充电。还有一样让我感到非常幸福的，那就是音乐。听音乐的时候，是我最放松、开心、自在的时刻。最后，让我感到幸福的，就是一直陪伴在我身边、为我加油的粉丝们。因为有他们热情的支持，我才能获得力量，和粉丝们一起共度充满欢乐的时光。我的能量泉源来自这里。
Arirang。
Scientific discoveries of the curious and innovative modern man. There are 5 keys that will open the doors to the future. The first key consists of zeros and ones in the form of digital information. Human beings are becoming smarter thanks to the digital revolution, and our lives are rapidly changing. The second key is new materials. Humans aren't limited to naturally occurring materials anymore. By developing new artificial materials, we have reached a turning point in history. The third is genetic engineering. While food is plentiful today, it may not be so in the very near future. But through genetic engineering, we may be able to overcome this imposing threat. The fourth key is mutations. Mutations are the cause of diseases as well as an important impetus in human evolution. In this series, we will unravel the mysteries behind this amazing phenomenon. The fifth key is the sun. Mankind's need for energy seems to know no bounds. Now, through the sun, we are looking for a sustainable form of energy for the future. We will open the doors to the future of science through these 5 incredible keys. The nights of Seoul are as bright as day, as always. In a blink of an eye, the whole city is surrounded by darkness. The blackout spreads to the military demarcation line. A major blackout occurs in 2025, leaving the whole nation of South Korea in darkness. Chaos descends upon the streets.
아무도 없어요?
Accidents take place one after another. Modern civilization dies in an instant. Seven days into the worst power outage in history.
그러니까 언제 이용할 수 있냐고요. 지금 전화기 배터리도 하나도 없고 돈도 없는데. 네? 뭐라고요? 여보세요? 여보세요?
Civilized machinery turns into useless chunks of metal. People realize how precious energy is only after being trapped in darkness. Energy makes our lives so much more comfortable. The human race has developed on the foundation of abundant energy. Now, people cannot survive a single day without fuel or electricity. However, in one day, the source of life has disappeared. Can the human race overcome this crisis? How does science answer this question? By 2025, the lives of people have become more convenient with the development of science and technology. The world has become a place where you can get something done with the flick of a finger. Convenience comes from energy. Currently in 2025, the rate of energy consumption has increased by 58% compared to 2001. And 70% of the entire energy source is comprised of fossil fuels like petroleum and coal. The oil supply has already been coming to an end since 2020. Conflicts regarding energy problems are getting out of control.
The ongoing war between Israel and Iran has caused another global oil crisis. The Persian Gulf is the world's biggest supplier of energy, and the war there has seriously impacted the world economy. Our correspondent reports.
the world crisis is reaching its highest point in 2025. The relationship between humans and energy started a long time ago. Then what is energy? Energy is the source of power for all kinds of activities. It is the ability to work. Our ancestors had to rely on their physical strength to work for survival. They gained the energy to move their muscles from nature. Plant eaters consumed the solar energy stored in plants, and men fed on their predators, through which they obtained the energy to move their bodies. How do plants that exist at the bottom of a food chain gain energy from the sun? Plants have a system called chloroplasts within their cells. Chloroplasts mix the moisture they absorb from the earth, oxygen from the air, and sunlight to create glucose. We call this action photosynthesis. We may think that our energy comes from ingesting meat or vegetables. However, our energy fundamentally comes from the sun.
It really is the source of the energy that we use in everything we do. And it grows our food, it provides light, heat, warm, weather,